Dun, dun,
Hello,
dun, dun,
hello.
dun, 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 dun,
Exactly,
dun, dun,
exactly.
dun, dun. All right, Dash, you're gonna
Right.
park over here for a second. Okay, there we go. Hi, everybody. Greetings. Good morning, afternoon, evening,
Greetings.
whatever the time may be,
Greetings
and
from planet Earth.
and to all the ships at sea. Some
Yeah.
some newscaster used to use that as a sign off or sign on or something. Good day, and
Uh,
to all the ships at sea.
right. Well, welcome again to another Humpday
Yeah.
call. It is
Hi,
it is the
Simon.
Wednesday. Hey, how about
Yes, it
nice to see you?
is.
It's like it's been a
Yeah,
week
it's
already.
165 hours since the last time I saw you on screen. So,
Do you know what?
yeah.
It's just scary when you start counting the weeks. Like there's only 52 weeks. And you're like, oh my god! Like
Well,
it's years.
168 minus a few. It's
I
always the
know, right?
same kind of number, so it's not that hard, really.
It's scary though. Time
168
flies.
minus. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it feels like we just did this yesterday, but of course, it's been a while. It's been a week. Things have happened. I've had all sorts of activity in my personal and business life. So it's like I was at last night's karaoke, and I was like thinking, didn't I just do karaoke at this location yesterday or the day before? And it's
That
like,
was last week.
wow. Oh, it was like a week ago. Yes. And my favorite karaoke, KJ there, hadn't been there last week. So it was like 2 weeks since I saw her. And I was thinking, yeah, but it feels like it was just yesterday. So it was great. So anyway,
All right.
I could talk about
Let's.
karaoke all day, but that's not why we're here. We're here about what, Simon?
Is that Flutter and Dart? Is that the thing we're here about?
Flutter and
Just
Dart. And to answer
as you,
people's questions soon,
oh,
and
yeah,
to talk
yeah.
to some special guests today too, as well. So
Indeed. Let me let's get going on the
let's
introduction
get
piece. Yeah.
started. Yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah.
So yeah, do's and don'ts. Randall, go for it.
Okay, so always be nice, be respectful, be constructive. This is YouTube. This is a live chat. Don't treat it like some of your other social media places that you might have. Don't post anything adult or rude or offensive. We do have a ban hammer here, and we will get rid of you. So that would be just annoying. Don't advertise or promote anything. The only people allowed to promote things are people that are on screen. Okay, so we can talk about stuff that we're doing, but you guys, get your own show. All right. Don't spam. Don't post the same thing again and again, particularly since I am the question magician, which means I am watching for questions in the chat. If you post the same question twice, you come off the top of the list and put onto the bottom of the list. So you're just wasting your position in the queue. Don't worry. We see them. I see all. Okay, harassment of any kind, not tolerated. We do not tolerate harassment. Again, Banhammer is quick and direct. But above all else, do have a good time. We're having a good time putting this show on because we don't get paid for this. So it's got to be that we're having a good time. So yeah. Anyway, that I think Simon that covers it for.
I think it covers
this
it.
morning.
Yeah. Let's brief. You've heard it all before, but we'll say it again. My name's Simon Lightfoot, self-proclaimed Flutter community leader. We were doing it from the day one. And I'm the CTO at Dev Angels London, small developer agency. And you can follow me on Twitter at Dev Angels London. Scott can't be with us today; it's very busy. But Randall, you're here.
Yeah.
Introduce
So
yourself.
I am Randall Schwartz. I am for 5 years now, coming up on my 5th anniversary in about 3 days. A Dart and Flutter Google developer expert, one of the first batch of those actually, and that just means I spend a lot of time on all of the social things like Discord and Slack and Reddit and stuff, answering all your questions all the time. Seems like way too much of the time, but I love answering questions, so I'm having a great time almost 24/7. And I'm also, again, as I said earlier, I'm the question magician for this show, which means I am watching the chat, the live chat that we have. Y'all are in there. You can ask questions of us by putting Q : in front of your question. Then I'll know that it's for us and not just chat amongst yourselves, because you often do that too. You often answer each other's questions. That always helps us too, because it's something we don't have to deal with then. So yeah, I think that covers it all. I think the caffeine's actually kicked in. Don't tell my doctor. I'm supposed to not be on caffeine now.
And we also have a few more guests with us.
Yes.
Danielle, welcome to the stage. There you go.
Hey there. Well, I'm a self-proclaimed community member. One want to be here every week, so that's good there. So I'm a Flutter developer. I lead a team of Flutter developers at a company called Ardley that you've never heard of, but we're wanting to make a difference. We help out people in the mortgage industry, so that's kind of cool. And I'm working on Flutter Web, but it's really an app, if you get down to it. But the platform is Flutter Web, so that's an area of expertise I kind of have. And the thing I'm more proud of, though, is I'm one of the organizers of the Flutteristas. And so if you happen to be female or non-binary watching this and haven't heard about the Flutteristas, hit me up on Twitter. DMs are open, whatever. Let's talk about it. And, probably like to get you to join if you can. So that's me.
Cool. We have a few news things to talk about here. So let's jump onto a few things here. So first of all, in London, we've just announced that we're doing the Flutter Dev Camp 2023. This isn't just for people in London; it's for a lot of people. If you're interested, there is a website you can go to. Hang on, let me post it in the chat for everyone. It's an official event for GDG London, and you can find that here. And particularly, we're going to be talking about state management. We may go to a bit of this later on in the show, but this will be covering Block, Riverpod, Get It, and a few other things all around state management, basically. Cool. How state management works, what it's all about. So I wanted to just cover that just briefly. I get to advertise that. We also have Flutter and Friends. That's coming up in the community 3rd to 5th September in Stockholm, in Sweden. And right now, if you use Flutter Community, you'll get 20% off your tickets. So at flutterfriends.dev. So definitely check that out, especially if you're in Europe around that time.
And especially if you have friends, because it's Flutter and friends. So bring friends.
Right. Bring friends. Exactly.
I don't have any friends.
I'm not sure you could go to one of these and not end up with a lot of friends.
True. Yes. If you don't bring any, you can take some away. It's always good there.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we have another guest with us today. Majid, welcome to the stage. Hey, Majid.
Hello. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. I hear you're going to talk to us about Flutter Firebase Festival.
Oh yeah, I can talk about that too. It's been a while that I have not joined this show, so my times are going very fast and crazy. I don't notice like how we're getting to Wednesday every week. So okay, right. But let's talk about F3. F3 is an event that is organized by my company, Invertase, and this is going to be the first time that we're going to kind of unify two technology and two communities together. It's going to be Firebase and Flutter together. So you will see a lot of folks in both communities if you're joining from Flutter. So you will see a lot of folks from Firebase community as well. And we're going to have a very strong collaboration with Firebase and Flutter DevRel team. So you'll see a lot of Googlers from both teams. As you will see the website right now, f3.event, we announced around 25 speakers, which most of them are from Firebase and Flutter DevRel team. And this is going to be 2 days events. We're focusing on, again, the celebration part of these events for unifying both communities. We're focusing also on the diversity part of it. So we announced a diversity program. So if you are part of the underrepresented group and you cannot really afford the ticket, we're happy to sponsor that. So please reach out to us. And I also put 50% ticket discount code on for Simon. So hopefully he will show it on the link somewhere below. You get 50% off if you're watching this video right now.
Limited time only, he says. That's the Let me see if I can get that up. That'll be.
The timing is 21st. Oh, sorry, I thought that it's already in the banner. So it's 25th and 26th of September, 2023. Yes.
No, 26th, 27th September.
26th and 27th.
Yeah.
And it's going to be in Prague. And Prague is one of the very lovely cities in Europe. If you're around, please join us. So it will be very nice. And we are also expecting around 500 to 700 people. So hopefully it's going to be a big event, lots of celebration.
Wow.
I wish I could be there, Majid.
Yeah, me too.
I hope you will. I will have a private chat with you later. we had a chat in Berlin, to be honest, but we need to catch up again.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Yep.
Sounds good.
Cool.
There's been quite a few events already this year, and there's also going to be more. So yeah, pace yourselves, people. Pace yourselves. But
and
we obviously need to come to all the events.
We are still in the planning stages, so I don't have a nice, pretty slide to show, but we are working on our next Flutteristas conference.
Yes.
Which is a conference that's presented by the Flutteristas with help from allies. So, like the people on the screen here will be, I'm sure, helping us, make sure we put on a good show.
Maybe.
And anyway, more details on that will be coming out soon, but that's going to be probably at the beginning of November.
Cool.
Nice.
It'll be so it will happen everywhere.
Just in time for my birthday.
And again, I just any people that don't know, we also do a Flutter track in DroidCon London, and that's in 23rd of October, I think, 25th October, end of October as well. So there's loads of stuff happening. This is just what I know about. So yeah, I'm sure there's other things in your local facility. So always check out your local Flutter meetups as well. A lot of them meet up regularly. And also don't forget to sign up on us on Twitter. You can find announcements and things.
And I know Scott Randall and I would love to have something happen here in the US.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
It does honestly surprise me at how limited that the US is at the moment with Flutter and meetups. But I think I do forget sometimes about how wide the US, how big the US actually is, right? So just to say there's something in my state still doesn't mean it's close to you, right?
Yes.
We have states with counties that are bigger than some European countries.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a lot harder to organize. I think one of the things that we saw at the very beginning of Flutter was that a lot of communities would spring up, all sorts of little communities all around the world. When we first did the Flutter Hackathon, the first Flutter Hackathon, that was 70 locations worldwide, each with about 25 people on average. But the one in India was 300 people. It's like you go, well, where is this in the US? And it's like, well, no, there was these groups, but again, it's like they spring up in little bits all over the world, and it's just like if you're interested in making you in the US and you want to start doing a GDG group or a Flutter group, there's plenty of resources out there, plenty of resources to starting up these groups and building a community. And it's slow to build a community at first. Trust me, I know. Like you start off with just 5 people coming to your meetup, and it grows 20 people. Before you know, you've got 50, 80 people turning up on a regular schedule. And you're all chatting about Flutter and or Dart or whatever you want. So. Anyway.
I guess the most important part of it is just to start, because someone needs to start in that local community, and then people will come,
And to also say that you'll when you start something like this, you'll find allies and you'll find people that want to do it with you.
Absolutely.
And that's what it's not all just on your shoulders, but you need to stick with the beginning. You need someone needs to be the seed of the effort. Right. Also, briefly, before we jump into the questions, thank you for people who are posting. Still continue to post your questions at the queue in front, and we'll get to them. Something else I wanted to see if I can get this shared on the screen.
7 so far. 7 questions by now so far. That's a good sign. That's a good sign.
I saw this just before the show, and I was like, I really want to show this. So Simon, who's the developer of ISA, he's just updated the benchmarks for his new version 4, which also supports an SQLite engine. And it's on par or faster than Realm and ObjectBox. This just shows you what even a small development team can do, in time permitting, right? And if we look at this, as bad as big as it's going to get. This one it's bigger. Hang on. There we go. Is that any better? I don't know. So I mean, just look at this. Like filter and sort 50,000 objects on iPhone 14. Look at ISO and ISO SQLite compared to the competitors, right?
Wow.
You say, I mean, that's Dart. That's Dart and Flutter and C++ code working together. Same goes for insertions. Again, look at that. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. And then even when you talk about updates, it's on par, if not better. And deletion. So it's kind of interesting, right? Like you see, I kind of wanted to talk about this because it's kind of interesting, right? When you get like a project, you can like somehow startup gets some funding, and suddenly they add a bunch of people, right? And suddenly the project goes into being a democratic product, right? In a nice way, right? But the problem here is you get lots of developers all doing lots of things, and then before you know it, the core tenets of what you're trying to build go out the window, right? Very quickly, and it's tough for a startup to stay focused. And I just sounded like this thought. It's kind of interesting that I think about Realm and Objectbox as being those kind of like still being those kind of like go-getters of like the database on mobile world. Yeah, looking at those comparisons, you're like, well, they've lost something there, Yeah, just thought it's interesting to briefly mention. Have you guys ever used any of those solutions? Objectbox, Realm, ISAR?
I've used local SQLite. I don't know that I've used any of the rest of them.
I've in the past I've used Realm and SQLite, and I've played around with Objectbox, haven't used it in a product.
And shared preferences,
of course,
and secure
Yeah,
storage.
yeah,
Secure
of course.
storage.
I mean, the difference, like, it's like something I saw someone the other day talking about. Why can't I just store, like, what was it? They want to download the entirety of their database. So they do like some apps do this, right? Where some apps do this where they have a finite data set and it doesn't update regularly. So the idea is that you download, let's say, a product catalog. You can download all the metadata for a product catalog in one lump sum, right? And then you can maybe do diffs of that, or if you even need to, right? Depending. But it's nice to actually have it one, and then you can use it offline. And there's other reasons why you might want to do that model of downloads. But when you do something like that, I had someone the other day say, "Okay, we'll just put their shared preferences," and I'm like, no, don't put your entire product database in shared preferences. It's not meant for that, right? The key is in the name. It's preferences. It's like key value pairs. So that you've got a file. You can have access to the file system. Chuck it in a file, right? Read it from a file when the app starts up. And even better, if you've got something like ISAR, then you've got an actual object database. So you can query like specific IDs, and it's really quick and really fast to retrieve data.
Well, isn't a JSON string a string? That sounds like a value. I could just put the whole database as a single JSON string, right?
Out.
Leave. Yeah, that works.
Right. Oh, God. Save us. Right. Save us. Like, we have gone.
That's like what
I had one of those comments on a question that I think Ruben asked the other day, where Simon, I think, rightfully decided it was probably a refactor at some point where it had like, a variable equals the same variable equals something else. And I made the point that it could actually be a setter, which means it could act with a side effect. So it could actually make a difference doing the code like that. That would be bad though.
Yeah, you don't want to don't trick your code reviewers. That's not a good thing to ever do.
It is. Sometimes you see some stuff which just has like side effects, then goes into asynchronous code that has more side effects, and before you know it, like, you just got this like
right.
Yeah, there's an interesting like hump for developers. I feel like at the beginning, developers beginners don't know what to do and how to approach something, right? Then you get to go intermediate developer, which just like overly complicates things because they want to try all these different things. Before you know it, gets really complicated, and then you kind of get to the more sort of experienced developer, and then it starts simplifying again. You know how to approach something, and you know how to do it simple, and you don't mind refactoring. So you kind of hopefully kind of every developer, I think, lives this curve of sort of development skills.
At the beginning, we give junior developers the Toolbox Junior that only has like a hammer and a saw in it. And then when they get bigger, they get the Craftsman floor mount 16 drawer thing. And then they try to use all the tools at once. So if they get that a little too early in their cycle, they go nuts. I've seen it happen.
But it's interesting though that you do get. I like we were talking about this the other day as I don't know who I was talking to now, but it's like the kind of yak shaving that happens, right? Like this idea of like you just redoing the wheel. However, in doing so, you get things like this ISAR pop up, right? Which is like, yes, there's other competitors, yes, there's other things, but look how good that is compared to the competitors, right? Yeah. It just shows you there is a reason to doing that. And also, I bet you Simon, when he's developing Hive as well as this, he just learned so much about databases and everything else that, he's now a database expert, full stop. He could, that same knowledge can be applied to even huge databases, right?
Right. Like I've learned a lot about state management from having dealt with the guts of Riverpod a lot. And I really understand very interesting subtleties now about setting up dependencies about data that I didn't have maybe last year or 2 years ago, although I had it derived from other things I did, like building, believe it or not, some of my knowledge about building make files in Unix went into understanding the dependency management I use in Riverpod. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that basis of dependency management in make files is like the underlying pinning of all build processes, right? That we have. It's kind of nice though. You think about that, right? Like you understand the fundamentals, you understand a bunch of other sort of breakaways from that. It's like languages. However, it doesn't stop someone coming in fresh with a fresh mind and saying, "Here's how I want to approach." Building apps, and it's completely not what you would do if you had that backing knowledge, and that's kind of where the action comes in. Something, if you come at something from a different perspective, you can make it more optimal or better in some other way, right? So,
I one of the things I always liked about Make when I was cutting my teeth back in the day, making like C programs with multiple modules and stuff like that, is the fact that it was easy enough to understand how to make a simple Make file, but if you got into it, you could see like the default rules, like for example. If you needed to create a .o file, you could just say, and you have a foo.c, you could just say make foo.o. There's a default rule that knows how to do that. And if you needed to change it because you're adding some, pre-compiler directives or whatever, you could do that. But the fact that so it's one of those things that was simple enough that you could just come in and use. And then later on, you could actually learn how to do it, make it better and make it, improve it, stuff like that. So no, I think a lot of those things are very well done like that.
And then you get GNU make files, which are Turing complete. So it can take forever for a build because the halting problem applies.
I thought you were just about to start mentioning some of the other build systems, which are meta build systems, like that build files, like build make files.
Build make files, yeah.
All right, let's get to some. Should we get to some questions?
These aren't Flutter or Dart questions.
I definitely want to get on the questions, but I just want to say I'm proud of our people asking the questions today. Because we have a lot of testing questions. So these guys are doing a great job. Let's
jump in. That's the first question. By the way, if you, Danielle, Majid, if you need to drop off, feel free just to raise a hand and just let us know. Right. Let's jump in. Paco, he's one of the Flutter London people. How can we force integration test to end from inside the test itself? That's interesting. Well, you could just do return early, right? I suppose you could also do an expect false and make it fail, right? That would throw an exception at end. The other one, I guess, I don't know, depends on what you're doing if you need to do it, but you guess you could do system navigator.pop, which basically tells it to, it's the same as basically doing like an exit on your app. Maybe that also helps.
Yeah, I mean, when I first saw this, I was thinking that, well, maybe I don't understand the question because your test is you're doing a bunch of different steps. So if you want to stop doing these steps, you're done. But maybe the app is like hung up or something.
I was thinking. Sorry, as soon as you started talking, I was thinking maybe this is not even doesn't mean an individual integration test, like a test case. It means maybe not the entire group or the entire thing. So it doesn't, because if you return from an integration test, it continues to the next one, if you tell it to run a bunch. But how do you exit out everything all at once, right? I'm sure there's a way. I mean, like the tester framework is pretty extensive. I don't know of any particular method that you need to run to do that. I'm kind of curious myself. I'm going to take a quick look. Because there is a test. Actually, I'll bring this up on stream. Actually, shall I? Why not? So I was just looking at
32 minutes into the show, and Simon is already showing stuff on his screen.
Why not? We're here.
It's a benchmark.
Well, I mean, like widget tester is like even you doing an integration test now, the same as like essentially widget test. You get the widget tester as your initial sort of entry point. Widget tester has an access to the binding, and there's also an instance of the binding, which is like your base test widgets binding. This is the same as like Flutter widgets binding. I think it is the main framework one. So I would be pretty sure that that you could probably live test widgets binding. That's not computer.
Okay, so we, by the way, Simon, we do have a comment back saying that what happened was the app had an overflow error and the test didn't stop. But that would sound to me like maybe it was trapped in, it was actually caught. The exception was caught and it didn't go out to the test environment. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah. So when actually they do state this, if you you must not set. So actually, there's an error now thrown on stable. I believe this is a known issue, but I think this is the issue you're having. Flutter error.on error, which is the global uncaught exception handler stuff. If it literally says, do not override this during a test, because you captured the error and then the test case doesn't get the error, so it doesn't think it failed. And that sounds to me like what would happen, because if you get Stack Overflow, it will travel down as an exception, an error exception down the stack, and be caught by that for sure. So the only way that's not happening is if you've overridden that. So check Flutter error.on error, which is the global sort of singleton thing for error capturing, error handling.
Yeah, because if it doesn't throw an exception to your test environment has no way of knowing one happened.
I'm pretty sure it's actually documented now, and that if you try and override it, it sets a flag, and then during test it checks it, something like that. But
and by the way, Simon, he also said you were spot on with the stopping all the tests versus just an individual test. He said that's also a problem he's having. So good on you.
Yeah. So for those that don't know what I was talking about, it's Flutter error.on error, which is called whenever a Flutter framework catches an error. So by default, it calls present error or whatever. But yeah, you must not override this. Oh, look, testing errors, maybe. I don't know. I feel like there's a specifically something. For life of me, I can't. Oh, here. Oh no. I feel like there's documentation somewhere I've read where it states this, and in fact, I think it throws an exception now. So check that. Also check you're not doing a zoned capture as well. Like basically any uncaught exceptions should not be. You shouldn't set up your uncaught exception handlers when running tests for this exact reason. Anyway, hopefully that helps.
But you probably should have them when you're not running tests. So that's.
Oh yeah. So for those that don't know how you do this, I will just briefly mention this. When you run Flutter test or Flutter drive, you can specify --dart define. This allows you to set up like an environment variable, and then inside of your Dart code, you can get a constant value of that. And what that means is it doesn't compile the stuff you don't need. So, for example, what you might do is do something like, let's see if we go look at the bool Dart class. You'll have bool.from environment as this global thing. And what this is this name that you pass in is the name of the Dart define that you pass in to your Flutter test case. And what it would do is the return response to this, you put into a variable like here, const flag logging, right? Or you can do obviously a string or some other thing, right? But doing something like this, and then you can pass true or false as logging as a Dart define, and then this flag is testable inside your app. You then surround, for example, you can say running integration test or integration _ test or something here as the key. Yeah. And then this flag is globally set inside your app. And then around your startup of your app, when you do your initialization of your uncaught exception handler, you can say, oh, am I running integration test? Then don't do it. Otherwise, do it, right? Simple. And that way, if your app is running, it is being built and run from an integration test, boom, it will set up the uncaught exception. Otherwise, it won't. So that's how you handle that. Cool. All right. Should we go to the next question? Unless anyone else got anything to add? All right, moving on. Rico, do you want to take the questions, Randall, or should I?
I guess I could do that. I want to test my branch before each development or deployment. Sorry, how this pipeline usually is, and what advices do you have for it? I mean, I'm running all unit widget golden integration tests on a branch for.
We had a line right after that. Right after that had that. So let me see if I can find out.
Oh, I hate two-parters because then I don't see
I
them all.
I could do it. I could do it. Hang on.
Okay.
I think.
Merging and deploying the new release.
Oh,
Okay. Well,
So,
there
yeah.
it was. All right. Go, Simon. Answer.
Oh, I mean, this is going to depend on your CI/CD process. I mean, in my company, we're using Git and we're using Git actions, and we have a set of actions that we run, and those include running the golden test. It includes running the widget tests. So you run all of those, and if they fail, then the action fails, and you don't keep going. But that's with Git. But there's some very good Flutter CI/CD solutions out there too. That so it's going to depend on what solution you're using. Flutter's only one part of my companies. That's why we use the Git stuff. But
I mean, what you get for any of these CI/CD solutions is essentially a scripting shell, right? So you can literally go run Flutter, as you know, it says you're running them. So you're running Flutter test and Flutter drive and whatever else you need to run to get the results of your tests. I'd say that you just don't need to run everything all at once, right? So from a deployment, definitely you want to run everything, right? That is your one go to run everything and make sure everything does. But yeah, I would say you should be running like unit tests, or widget tests or whatever on your PRs, maybe even integration tests. I know it depends on what you're doing, right, and how long they take. There's another aspect to this is cost. I mean, which is that if you're not using your own equipment to run the tests on, then suddenly there's a cost involved in all of this that you're running, and running it all the time is super expensive then. So one thing you can do is set up a actions runner on your local machine, and then you can set that up on your project. So whenever GitHub Actions want to run, they actually run inside like a VM on your local machine or something like that, and then that can be there active all the time. That's another option. But you said I want to test my branch before each deployment.
And
one more thing. So go ahead, Daniel.
Oh, you go, Majid. You started first.
I just wanted to also, it really depends on your team and how it structures, because like there are teams that you have like a Q&A team, then it goes to other teams. So one of the other aspects on top of the cost is also timing. So if you run everything, it just slows down your team.
Yeah.
So it depends on which level of the team you want to test your branch. You also need to think about that one too, right? So if you're just testing between some developers to get something merged, or like creating another branch on top of that, then maybe just running unit tests should be enough, or like the low cost test that you can run without very fast. So it just really depends on how you structure your team as well.
I mean, if you do your come.
I was going to say, looking at like how I would structure this for mine is, I wouldn't think integration tests would be something I would run on a PR. There's something I want to run when we're getting ready to release something and go along with that. And the other point I want to make is you don't test your branch. You test what the merge will be with your branch of where you're going into, because you want to make sure that whatever the merge is going to play well, not just what you did. If it was just what you did, you could run it. That
depends. I would say that's if you're doing Git merge. If you're using Git rebase, then it's not a problem.
Okay.
So and Git rebase, because your branch is now rebased on top of main, you're testing everything on main and your branch, which achieves the same result. It's the same result, basically.
Yeah, but it's definitely got to be a merged version for sure. However it is, whether it's rebase or it needs to include.
I was just going to say that you could also model it on the way that Google does it for Flutter itself, which is that to get onto master branch, there's a suite of tests that have to be passed before it'll accept it onto master. But before it goes from there to anything more like one of the dev releases or whatever, there's a much larger suite that has to run.
Yeah.
And that includes customer provided tests and a bunch of other stuff to really make sure that nothing goes wrong with that dev branch or beta branch, particularly. So,
I was going to say, you can do the 2-branch approach as well, which is also quite common, which is like you have a developer branch and you have a main branch, right, or master branch, and then basically you're committing on your however you want to do it, but you're essentially committing on one branch. And when that branch then gets merged into your main branch, it goes through your whole suite of tests. And at that point, then you can say, okay, something's broken on your dev branch. You need to go fix that before we can merge this, right?
I mean, right now the way we're doing it is probably sort of like, I guess, sort of like how it does, only kind of thinking of it in reverse. Is we have a task, like if I'm developing something, I would create it in a task branch, and then I would take that task branch, I merge it into a dev branch, which gets merged into a test branch, which gets merged into my release branch. And so it's sort of like the master beta, stable, just kind of thinking of it in reverse. I'm kind of working my way up. It's maybe coming down, but same idea. But yeah, you always start with a task branch. You wouldn't make any changes directly into.
I do wonder, like here, I want to test my branch before each deployment. How this pipeline usually is, and what advice do you have for me? I'm running all the unit tests before each. I guess, yeah. I mean, I think we've spoken about this enough. I don't know if we can add any more. I would go check on the official actions and also other people's GitHub actions and various things. There's quite a few out there for Flutter and Dart, and that doesn't mean you can't start up your own. And just as I said, like it's just like shell commands. You can just put whatever you want in there and have it work. But there's also like fail fast. So as soon as one test fails, it doesn't bother running the rest. That could be advantageous for quick tests from your own separate branch. But if you want to do like a full test, you want to run through all the tests, even if it fails. You get like a whole picture of what's failed, right? Rather than just the first thing, because you don't want to have to keep rerunning the tests on each failed test, right? So there's different avenues to how you approach these things, and it really does depend on the project and what you're doing. All right. Next question. Right, moving on.
How to do drag and drop file? I tried some packages, but none of them works. Am I missing something?
Okay, this needs clarification as to what platform.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So what platform?
Yeah.
So
drag and drop on my phone, probably not. I don't drag files around my phone.
I'm going to assume they mean web or they mean desktop, right? And the problem you've got is that it is, and there's a problem you've got with some packages, none of them work. So two things, right? One is it's very dependent on permissions on the platform and how that's done. So they may not be working because you haven't granted that, or the app doesn't have the permission to rescind or receive data in the way that that's being shared. The other one is, as you said, it's very dependent on the platform, and you need to have very much platform-specific knowledge to implement something. When it comes to web only allows you to drop onto files. These are like file input fields. There is some magical things you can do with web around like how you place that. I tested with web and desktop, right? Yeah. So in the sense that when it comes back to web, if you go, honestly, the key about web and desktop, I think, is to look up your problem without Flutter. Right? Go look at how do I do this on web? Go look at how someone's fixed it with JavaScript, and then implement that in Dart or Flutter, right? The same way, or think about it the same way. But yeah, you're going to be, whenever you're dealing with anything outside of your application, you're now dealing with platform-specific behavior, and it's going to be difficult. It's going to, if you don't know about the platform, it's going to be something new to learn. There is, I know that. There's some great packages, and I can see if I can find one for you because it's on the tip of my tongue. I can't remember the name of it. So if anyone else got anything to add to this, sorry, I'll just dive straight in there.
No.
Who was it that was doing this? The one time I want to find out what this was. Was it? It was Super Drag and Drop. That was it. So let me bring this up on stream.
Super Drag and Drop.
So a company called Superlist has been doing a desktop-based product for some time.
Oh.
And it's supported by a developer, Mathieu here, who does native shell. And there's a bunch of plugs that Super Sliverless, Super Drag Drop, Super Clipboard, and these Super Keyboard Input. These are all about like interactive with like the native components of this is the big one, Native Shell Core, and I think it was the one. Was it Native Shell? Anyway, no, Native Shell. Sorry. This is the big one, which is like how you might do drag and drop with a desktop and stuff, and but they actually do have a very specific package called Super Drag and Drop, which is just a drag and drop feature. And as you can see here, here are 2 applications running on tablet. This is on an iPad in this example, but this also works on Mac, iOS, Android, Windows, and web. And as you can see here, you can just drag like it's the same thing across 2 different applications, Flutter or not. And you can see here that
it looks like fun. I want to go play with that. I don't have time to play with these things. Too many toys.
Yeah, and as you can see here, it looks like there needs to be. It requires Rust to actually run this, blah blah blah. But the thing is, you're going to need to have Rust or C++ because you're interacting with the native components.
Right.
Maybe you could get away with FFI directly. It ends up adding more complexity probably for something like this. But yeah, that's a great package. I would recommend that one. I'll put it in the chat for anyone that wants to try it out.
Cool.
But yeah, as I said, as I think you saw by the little graphic that came up there, that it does. You can, like for example, when you drag something, that overlay graphic is attached to the mouse needs to go outside of your window, which means it's not done in Flutter. It's done in native. You might render in Flutter. The final image is then captured, and then that's rendered around the mouse when you move outside your window space. So it gets complicated, but hopefully that using just a package will help.
Awesome.
That's a cool question, though. Cool thing. I like it.
Yep. So Paco says, taking a screenshot from inside integration test package, is that working or work in progress?
You can do that. There's a separate on screenshot callback. It was part of driver, and you still essentially need to use driver. So all integration test package still uses driver under the hood. It's still always going to use that because it has to start up a bit on your computer on the host platform and a bit inside the test case so it can communicate and report the results. That's what driver is. So driver starts up this beginning bit, and then the integration test suite is actually the entire thing as a whole that allows you to communicate and return those results back. You can set up you still use Flutter Drive. In fact, I think there's documentation on the Flutter website for this. I seem to remember. Hang on, let me see. I'm going to bring this up on screen. I just bear with me. So this is I'll post this link in the chat for anyone that's interested in understanding integration tests and what it's about. Here it says describe the use of the integration test package, compatibility with the Flutter Drive command, and if you want to use Flutter Test Lab. You don't need to use any of this stuff, right? Flutter Test Lab is all optional. You just run it in a local machine or whatever. It does explain the principles involved. I won't go into that. But yeah, project setup essentially include the package, and then you just write your tests like you would do with widget tests. However, these tests are run because they run from the integration test folder. When you run them, they run on device, and this is how they're different from a widget test. A widget test just runs in a emulated Flutter environment, essentially, like on your local machine. But this actually runs on a real device, which also means that you can take advantage of plugins and other things to test the full workflow. So briefly, if you look down here. Example here of running in the browser. So what you do, you can see here, you create you can see an integration test driver. I would just make a where is it? Test driver folder with your integration test. This is the magical thing. This is from the integration test framework. This runs the entire backend for the test driver stuff, but you can actually customize. I think it's this one that you get to customize with the on screenshot callback. Yes, I think it is.
And by the way, the part you're on there is the part that's relevant to me, because if I'm wanting to run integration tests, I believe I still have to do it this way with a Flutter Drive using the running the browser part there.
I'm gonna miss this. I know I am. It's not where I expected it was. I know that it's around here, but I don't think it's in this example in here. But essentially, you still run it like this. You run Flutter Drive with driver with target, and you're running the integration test framework with your own custom driver, and that custom driver can capture the screenshots, if I remember rightly. And I feel like I'm not remember rightly, so hopefully that puts you in the right direction. I feel really bad now. I know I'm gonna have to dig this out. It's gonna bug the hell out of me now. It's on screenshot. I know it is. convert Flutter to image. I literally just Googled this and yeah, it was. Oh, has it been removed? I'm wondering if it's been removed. Okay, this is interesting. Okay, let me bring this up on stream here. Hang on. So, hang on. If I bring up the integration test function, this is the one from the test driver library. Yeah, this is the one here. There's no. I'm not missing this. There's this on response data, but nothing in here about screenshots. Yet in the original mechanism, which is actually documented in this lovely code magic, I just did a Google for it, is when this is essentially how it works. So where is it? You basically do your normal tests. You do bind and convert Flutter surface to image. That sends it back across the channel. You can do like take screenshot, and then your driver script, which is what we're just talking about, you'd have integration testing on screenshot. But it looks to me like that on screenshot parameter doesn't exist in the current integration test framework. So either I'm guessing. Oh no! Hang on. Integration test extended. What do you reckon that is different? Hang on. Bear with. Yes, it is. There's the trick. There's the trick. Hang on. Let me reshare this. So it looks to me like that's what you're probably missing. There's another function with the exact same name called integration driver, and it's in the extended library. And when it's an extended library, look what you get, on screenshot callback. And that's the magic that you need. So I'm assuming that this is probably where you got stuck. This is where I just got stuck, which is, when you get that callback on screenshot, this is the implementation. But when you get the on screenshot callback, that's when you can then decide if you want to save it to disk or what you want to do with the screenshot. But yeah. This example by CodeMatch, I'll put this in the chat. Yeah, it's still done exactly the same way, basically.
But and one of the things I thought I'd seen before, and Paco is mentioning in the comments, is using Flutter Drive on not on web. I think it's been deprecated, hasn't it?
It is.
So
Flutter Drive on web.
Flutter Drive on web, you have to use the Flutter Drive to use the Chrome driver.
Oh yeah.
The rest of the time,
yeah.
Flutter Test, it's actually wanting you to use Flutter Test, not Flutter Drive. So I think it's
yes.
been like
So here's the thing. So when the test integration package came out, basically you can run Flutter Test, and it knows it's an integration test folder, and therefore it runs it as an integration test using Flutter Drive internals. So it always uses Flutter Drive under the hood, right? The difference is you don't have to specify the driver because it knows internally what the driver function is, which is that integration driver inbuilt function.
Okay.
So it's just a shortcut.
Yeah, but he's saying if you use Flutter Drive, it complains. It says go use Flutter Test.
I've used it perfectly fine recently, so there should be no reason for that.
I think you're right, Daniel. So I think Flutter Driver is depreciated. So you need to use Flutter Test or Flutter Integration Test package.
Yeah, no. You're still using the integration test package, but you run the Flutter Drive command. Let me be clear about this. It's not the Flutter Driver package that you need to use. That's deprecated.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, you always use the Flutter Drive command, like for if you need to specify client side driver, host side driver. Sorry, which is what you're doing there essentially. That's all we explained, by the way, in that great article from CodeMagic there. So I didn't look at the author, but yeah, I'm sure it's awesome. Right. Anyway, next question. My watch. Best way to find a Flutter job.
Find the job.
Keep trying.
Keep trying.
To recruiters.
Yeah.
There's lots. I mean, there is lots of jobs available, and I think the problem here is that there's lots of developers as well. A lot of the things that I've been hearing from in the communities around the fact that a lot of people that want people doing Flutter, they want someone that's more full stack, someone that's got Android experience or iOS experience. So if you're looking for a job, I would say go also train yourself up in some native in each of those native components, like try web, try Android, try desktop, get that experience under your belt so that you can be more valued as a candidate for a job, basically. Anything else anyone wants to add?
As a junior, it's a little tough. especially tough.
Mm.
Because you might not have many junior jobs available in your area, and hiring a junior for a remote is almost never happening. Almost always, when people are hiring remotes, they're hiring people that already have some experience. But again, this is the old problem of catch-22. How do you get experience without getting experience? But participate a lot in the socials, and you'll get noticed, and people will say, when you start hearing jobs, there are job posting areas on the Slack and on the Discord. So you can watch those and post there if you're available.
Open to work.
Reach out with your
LinkedIn.
link us, link your resume, your CV, like open it, obviously remove personal identifiable information if you want to, if you're posting on the internet, right? But reach out, say I'm available, I've got this skill set, I've got this I've been using Riverpod for 6 months, I've been doing it for a year, I don't know, this is all stuff that people want to understand, to see if you're all you need is one person to visit that and go, okay, this is great, and then they're going to hire you, right?
There's one more thing that probably they can do, which I do from time to time, is like on some sites, like for example LinkedIn, you can set hashtag for some kind of job, or also look following certain like job positions,
right?
And so then you can also do that. So I actually said that I'm every day I receive some kind of email from LinkedIn that this job is posted, and stuff like that. So you can also do that.
What's the other thing I've seen? Actually, I really like this. Lou Pighetti, when he's live streaming, he puts like a live around the bottom of his avatar.
It does.
Which I thought was just brilliant. And I think that's another thing to do. Like if you've got an avatar, put a little big green border around it with a big thing that's saying available right now, Flutter developer.
Looking for work.
This is actually a feature in LinkedIn. If you say I'm available, it actually makes that around.
Yeah, that's what reminded me of it. But what I'm trying to say is add it to all your social medias, right? Put yourself out there.
Yeah.
Right?
Another thing is if you don't have a lot of experience, there's a collaborate channel on the Flutter Discord. And what's great is you can just say, people will post, I need somebody to help me with this. Well, that's a great way. If you're not actually being paid right now and you're looking for a job, a great way is to collaborate on a volunteer project, because then you can carry that away as part of your resume. Very important to have more experience in doing the collaboration stuff, is why we set up that channel on the Flutter Discord.
And if you're really junior, the thing I would say is programming in Flutter is part knowing Flutter, and it's a lot of knowing how to program, how to think, how to solve problems, things like that. So if it's your first or second job, it's much more important. Get paid, survive, get a job. It'll teach you how to think, how to solve problems, things like that. And when you bring that back to Flutter, you're going to see that your Flutter skills have just gotten so much better, because things are going to make more sense. You're going to understand things.
You can also,
as I've always said,
to Flutter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I've always said that programming is a craft, and a craft consists of both the science. So read all the APIs and the docs and do the videos and do the code labs and stuff like that to get the science of it down. But it's also the art, and the way you learn art is to study great artists and try to duplicate their work. Both of those will be very beneficial to your furthering in your career. So you want both the science and the art, and make sure you're doing both.
I think sadly, like from what I can tell from my experience in the years on programming, is there's kind of like two approaches, right, to this, like kind of beginning your career in software development. And that is, one is you need to find a corporate that wants juniors, that wants them employed, that will teach you on the job and you can learn. That's one avenue, right? Like that kind of that gets you on the road, it gets you that experience. Or you've got your normal job, maybe it's like waitressing or something, right? And you've got that's your side, that's your money earning, as Danielle said, that's your money earner. And on the side, you're teaching yourself, you're getting that experience. And at that point, you're essentially freelancing. So whatever work you can get, it's going to be not great paid, right? It's just not. Or it's going to be free work. But what you do build from that is a portfolio. That portfolio and the experience is what's going to take you to the next bigger thing. And that then experience of that next job, and again the experience and the portfolio of that next job takes you to the next one and the next one. And before you know it, that having that experience and having all those different like frameworks, services, languages, anything is going to back you into being like, you know, this is my resume. This is all the experience I have. These are all the projects I worked on. That makes you hireable because you have the experience behind you.
And
So
one thing
it's really tough at the beginning. Basically, it's that catch-22. Sorry, briefly, it's that catch-22 that Randall was talking about, which is you want to get paid to get the experience, but you need to get the experience to get paid. So it's like, right? Sorry, Randall, go.
No, I was going to say one more thing is the if you're trying to get experience, contribute to the Flutter repo because their code reviews are brutal. They will come out after you with everything that needs to be done, and you'll learn from it. So, you know, expect not to pass when you first put your stuff in. Expect to hear things, but the stuff you hear is all useful. It's all teaching you, you know, how things are done. You know, how to write a good test, whatever it is. You know, you're you know, by the time you've got that, you know, by the time you've been merged in to master, you've accomplished something, and I think stuff like that's helpful.
And I understand Majid's got to go. Majid's got to go. So
yeah,
we should
definitely.
talk about it.
So I'm going to go by one thing on top of what Daniele said, because now we also have Plus plugins in Flutter communities, not only contributing to Flutter repository, but also the packages that we have in the community, especially like Flutter community packages. You will learn a lot of these stuff. So you learn how we code it, how we structured, how we are reviewing, and not only us, like other authors as well. So this is a great way of learning. And thank you very much. I'm gonna leave.
Thanks,
Majid. Yeah, I mean, my first like code review on Flutter was Matt Carroll, and yeah,
brutal.
And I loved it overall because I learned a lot of, you know, I didn't always agree with everything he said, but I sure learned a lot of how to look at things and how to think about things and stuff like that. So definitely getting your code review is a great way to get experience.
Code review can also be done on the Flutter Discord. There's a channel just for that. And I recommend you take advantage of that. Even if you're not in a social that has a specific code review area, post your code. Say, I'm working on this. I'm thinking about this way. Because nothing makes you a better craftsman than to have to explain why you've chosen a particular strategy and then be told, oh, there's 3 other ways to do that. This one's even simpler than the one you did. Very, very handy to get that dialogue going on with people that have different experiences from you, not necessarily more, but at least different experiences. And those all collectively become the collective consciousness around the craft.
Yeah, you can't have a thick skin on it. You have to you have to take it with how it is. And there may be people out there that are evil with what they do, and they're trying to find something just nitpick to go, you know, but most people aren't like that. They have reasons for what they're saying and learn what it is. And you don't have to even agree with it ultimately, but you should learn from it.
Now, the other thing I was going to say is I do a lot of code reviews and I try and explain my reasoning behind something always. Sometimes there's not enough time, but if you ever question someone like, but why should I do it that way? Feel free to do that because they want you to learn. If they're any type of person, they want you to understand why they're suggesting it doing it a certain way, and you'll get their recommendation. But on top of this, like as Daniel said, like if you submit something to the Flutter repo and then they push you back straight away, and you got to do this, they push you back. Don't get disheartened, right? No. Like at the end of the day is when you do your next PR, you'll be like, oh, I've got that experience, and you know how you need to approach it now to learn from that. So you will feel you know, probably hold on.
I have all the scars to show for all the things I've done wrong.
I'll put you putting it in your watch.
Trust me, every scar. I wasn't putting the watch. I was putting the scars on my arm from all the ways I've done it wrong over the years. That's what makes me valuable from an experience point of view. Is that I can tell the next guy, no, don't go down that track. That's a track that's going to lead to damage.
I was going to say, there's dragons down there. Don't go down there.
Yeah. Beyond here lie dragons. Yes, exactly.
All right, let's move on. We'll be talking here forever.
Let's do it. Next can we talk about UI? Let's talk about UI. Yes, just want to know how to do a snack bar. Like Netflix's connection status snack bar will appear at the top of the screen. It also includes the status bar. Please heed. Please heed.
Um,
I don't know what
please
heed
help.
means
I guess
there.
that's a. I guess that's
yes.
got
Okay.
cut short.
Or did that get cut off? Is there something around that I didn't also quote?
I
I'm
don't.
sorry.
Let's see if I can find a follow up. No, I don't see
Okay.
any direct
Sorry,
follow up.
Frank.
Please help.
I guess please help. So interesting. You said that. I don't know. Does anyone know what that looks like? I don't even know. And this Netflix. Is this on like iOS or is this on like? Good question.
It's probably like their desktop. I know the little snack bar starting to show up in lots of things now. Like Facebook has one in the lower left corner when the connection goes off and on.
I'm trying to see if I can locate an image of this thing because honestly, I can't picture it. I guess I have a good connection.
I think it's the question. It's the connection. Is the question that you want the snack bar at the top instead of the bottom, which is not where it normally is, because that is possible, isn't there? Isn't there a quick way, Simon, to do a snack bar from the top?
You've got material banners, which is like built in with scaffold, I believe. There's a banner property. Actually, go look that one up. That's the kind of inbuilt one. However, I mean, people don't. I think a lot of developers in Flutter don't realize just how simple it is. You don't need some built-in widget to do this stuff. You just make a widget, make a stateful widget that has a stack in it. You pass in the child, you put that as your child of the stack. Now you can put stuff on top of that child at any point in time, which can also be an animated position, and have it just like pop down the top of the screen, right? And that can be a material with a stadium border, so you get like a nice little sort of pellet, pellet shape kind of thing, and they can have like, sorry, your connection's bad, and then have it do that from a stream of a flag from the back end, connection on and off, and
referencing an old MST3K show, maybe a little clown can come out and dance and point at the answer. It's a MST3K reference. Sorry.
But I'm pretty sure. So there's a widget called Banner, which is one of the this kind of like not ticks me off is the wrong word, but it does kind of irk me a little bit when sometimes when there's these widgets that have just got like such a simple name like Banner that are just like global, right? But anyway, displays a diagonal message across the corner, so it's not that one. Oh, is it Material Banner? I'm pretty sure that there's Material Banner. Material banner. Oh, look, there is a material banner. Oh.
Click.
Why?
Click.
It just takes a long time to load. It just, for some reason, it takes a long time to resolve. Anyway,
your
material design banner. Only when I'm streaming, so there must be something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there you go. Look, here's an example here. Here's a banner with text open and dismiss, and then you can you can see here. This is just in the body at the moment on the scaffold, but you can put that in a stack. You can animate it down, and the general idea is it's an alert notification that comes down from the top instead of the bottom, right? Look, show material banner. There you go. Look, perfect.
It's pretty.
Is that pretty? Oh, look, scaffold messenger. There you go. Scaffold messenger. Oh, there's already built. Yeah, scaffold messenger. Show material banner. There you go. So there's the magical command. Show material banner on scaffold messenger, and then you just give it a material banner widget, and away it goes. And then I guess there's dismiss if you enable it.
I'm just thinking of the long way around of getting from Green to the Hulk to David Banner back to Banner.
But yeah, I think material. I don't know. Like, here's the thing: like the ones that are going to be put into the framework are going to be material based. If you've got other ones, you can do it yourself. It's not that difficult. So, take it piece by piece. Danielle, I think you're muted because we can't hear you. You're muted.
Didn't pay enough money for her sound.
You're muted.
I was muted, and also my trackpad stopped going between my two computers, and so I had to pull the trackpad down to get there. First off, I was going to tell Randall to not make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I
Continuing the joke, yes, great.
But more importantly, I was going to say while you were doing the practical stuff of trying to show them how to do what they were talking about, the reason why I muted myself is because I was playing with Netflix on my phone. I couldn't make a banner show up, a snap bar show up.
Okay.
So
All right. Well, hopefully that helps. I guess we'll move on.
Yes. And Lucas Goldner says, thanks for the slivers last time, Simon. My question, can you give us a history lesson about state management? Oh, what did people use in the beginning? 1 + 1. No. How did it lead to provider and then to block and riverpod? We're filling needs. We're just filling needs. What story is there to tell?
It's just right. It's like at the beginning there was man and woman or something like that.
Oh yeah.
There was two atoms they smashed together and the Big Bang or whatever. You know.
In the beginning, God created global variables.
Yes.
No. It was the devil that did that. It was the devil.
Yes. Oh, yes. Now we're getting there. And they were not observable. They were not observable to anyone.
Right. Well, I'll briefly give you. I'm going to briefly give you a little bit of history lesson that you want, and it will be very, very brief. The framework comes with built-in widgets to do state management, and the problem with the term state management is it also encompasses architecture. For one of a better word, a Flutter app is UI driven, and most people think about the UI from the first step. That means that you're dealing with widgets and their state, and that is the app state that represents the widgets that you see on the screen. You should always think about your app having the state of what it's in right now, and then the widgets that represent that state. That's how you need to think about it. Now, then somebody's like, well, if I have my widgets, how do I manage my state? A la state management comes in play. Now, there are widgets in the hierarchy which help you get to your state management. That is whatever you're using for your business logic. And the ones that are built into the framework are inherited widget and inherited model. Both of those have practical purpose, and all of the state managements, if they want to use context, that is your build context, to find whatever their references are, they have to use those. That's what's built into the framework. You have to at least traverse the tree. You don't maybe have to use the inherited widgets, but you have to traverse the tree to find it. You'll find that was it Riverpod Scope? I think it's called for Riverpod or something.
Provider
like
Scope.
Provider Scope. That's the one. Sorry.
Yeah.
That essentially is that it provides down the tree the scope of Riverpod, and then Riverpod takes over from there. So all the listening happens inside Riverpod, and that can be Dart. That way, you can be using Dart and not with just Flutter. But the Riverpod Scope is just like the bit that links Flutter to Riverpod. Provider Scope. At the very beginning, we had those inherited widget, inherited model. Inherited model actually came later. We had a thing called scoped model, which was like the big one. That was by Brian Egan. Do you know what? I just remember where there was a repo that I needed to look at the other day, and it was Brian Egan's. Anyway, so Brian Egan, I actually think it was Brian Egan that did this. He started doing. I'm terrible if it is not Brian Egan, so apologies for the author if I'm getting the names wrong. There was someone that actually did a state management of a to-do application, and they did it in inherited widget, they did it in scope model, they did it in provider, they did it in a bunch of different, like showing you how to do different things. And I think it was Brian Egan now. Anyway, so a scope model came out, and that basically inherited widgets are a really hard concept for people to grasp, and you have to kind of wrap them. It's not like straightforward because it's a fundamental basic sort of thing. So scope model came out to kind of simplify that, and it did, and that made it use typing to find the stuff, which suddenly it was like, oh, this is a lot easier, blah, 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 blah. Scope model then wasn't, it had its own set of limitations, and it was done a certain way. And then the next thing came out, which I think at the time was Provider. There was there was another package called Provide, made by Google actually at the time, and that was deprecated in favor of Provider, made by Remy. And Block also came out around the same sort of time as another mechanism. And this is all just about how do I manage this state over here and have my widgets over here, and how do I have them linked up and reacting appropriately. And then finally, you've got from that point of view, the Riverpod, MobX, a bunch of other mechanisms and things come around, and all of these are about how do I link up all my components on the app so they all react nicely with each other, so that when one bit of data changes, the others that rely on that bit of data can also change. And that's essentially what state management is. You're managing the state, and it just so happens that when that state changes, you need to update the UI. And that's
the whole fundamental thing in all of these is that something in the core has a pub sub set up, so that listeners can all register their interest in a value, and publishers can all say the value has changed. So there is some watering hole in the middle somewhere. For something like Stream Block, it's streams. For something like Riverpod, it's a provider listenable. But there's always this watering hole where all the subs and all the pubs get together and figure out how to talk to each other. And you need that, because if you just have a global variable and you change it, nobody knows. Tree falls in forest, nobody around to pay attention. So all these mechanisms are about pub sub.
Yeah, and then like so many times, like inherited model came out because of the notion of you have like something with a lot of fields, but you only want to rebuild part of your UI when one field changes, right? And it could be maybe that object gets changed very frequently, lots of different fields all the time, and you don't want to keep rebuilding widgets unnecessarily. So then you can't get select came up from in provider that got kind of over into Riverpod as well, and this notion of also MobX and hooks, Flutter hooks also does this, which is where it's like it retains the previous state and compares, and if it's different, then it announces that it changes and rebuilds the widget. There's a bunch of like optimization, and these are all like things. Anyway, we're not going to talk about state management here because there's a whole thing that we just said about like Flutter Dev Camp coming up. I've lost my presentation slides. Oh no,
It's very relevant.
So yeah, if you're interested in more about learning about this, then I recommend you come to if I can get rid of the thing off the screen. I've lost my buttons. There we go.
And my job as question magician, I've got to say we've got a number of questions still in the queue. If we're going to get done by the top of the hour, so you can do some live coding, we probably ought to cut it off in 5 more minutes. So 5 more minutes, get all your questions in, and then we're cutting off.
The question, the answers, the sign up for this is in the chat, and you can go sign up to the event. Sure. We'll have a limited spots. If you're interested also in state management, there's also a whole section on the Flutter website officially, which on this link that's in the chat, that goes through thinking declaratively, how that works, ephemeral versus absolute. These are all common practice things. So if you're interested a bit more about this and understanding it's still there. The term state management in the Flutter world is definitely confused with architecture. And so be cautious about the way you use those terms, and also think of them as being synonymous with each other, and that when someone says state management, maybe we're talking saying architecture and vice versa, because it happens. And it's just ingrained in people now because, again, state management is state, and Flutter and the way it reacts, it's just the way it works. So,
and I think what Randall said was like spot on with the fact there's 2 parts to it. One is what are the values, and the second is when do they change?
Yeah, I think the problem here,
coherent solution.
The problem here is architecture is fundamentally like how you organize your project and how the components interact, and that does not have to use a state management technology. Right, but people build their entire app around a state management technology, and then they go, "Oh, well, I want to change it," and then like, well, now you've got a lot to change. So just think about what you're doing and how you do it, because it may bite you later on. Anyway, right, moving on. What's next?
How to do? Rico asks when to do a golden test and when to do a widget test. 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I think, for the first one.
They're solving 2 different problems. A golden test is entirely about, has my UI changed, or does my UI still look the same? And while you could go through like a widget test kind of path to get there to see that, that's not doing the right amount of work for what you want to do. So if you're testing how a widget works, what are the outputs of it, things like that, you'd want to do a widget test. If you want to test how it looks and make sure your UI has not changed, you would want to do a golden test.
Yeah, I mean, like you can use so a golden test is always going to be slower than a widget test, by at least a little bit. And widget tests can also be run on your local machine that don't involve any sort of device. Golden tests can require a device, if I remember rightly. Actually, I may be wrong about that one now. I think about it.
I run them on my Mac, but they're fragile too. Golden tests can definitely be fragile because they depend on like how the specific version of the operating system, for example, renders.
Yeah.
So every time I operate
the device screen is another good example of that, right?
Yeah. So
there's also fonts. Fonts is another big one with Golden Test because when you run your widget test, you're actually running with a what's it, the tofu font or whatever it is, basically like square blocks. And the idea is that every font character, or was it Golden Test? I can't remember. Every character is always going to be the same dimensions, so that way you don't get variation in too much variation in your test. But again, depends on.
If you bypass that like I do, then they're fragile. There's a reason why the experts chose to use that funky looking little blocky font, because if you render it with any kind of a system font, if a version of the operating system changes that font, you're going to be off by, and often it's off by a pixel or two, and you just can't. There's nothing visual, but you still have to go look through all your tests to make sure that nothing actually changed before you regenerate with the new version. And that means that, for example, all of our developers have to use Macs if we're going to run the Golden tests, because on a Windows the Windows machine is going to come out different than on a Mac machine, and we have to be running the same version of the OS. Otherwise, same thing, because there's certain things the way it renders, trying to do it in a system, way that you could be off by a little bit. So Golden tests, be careful with, but use them to make sure your UI is not changed. But don't use them to make sure that your path through your widget did what you wanted to. Test functionality. Test that with a widget test. Use a Golden test to test that it looks the same, so that you can make sure that your UI hasn't changed.
All right. Let's carry on here.
I told you I was talking to people this time.
Yeah, some unpronounceable names. Sorry.
Hey, before we jump onto the question, did we call out end of questions?
Yes.
Yes, we did.
Yeah. Okay, good. So the questions that we have the queue are the final ones. Okay, cool. Let's carry on.
So, how to create a test coverage and what percentage of coverage is good for a professional project? All of it, 110%.
Sorry, I love that last bit. I have one professional projects I've seen some professional projects that have got terrible coverage. So
most I would say have been of that.
What you want, to be honest, what you want to do is make sure that all of your dependents have good coverage, right? That's definitely what you want to, because it's like if most of your project is built out of all these packages and things, and they don't have coverage, well, it doesn't matter what percentage of coverage your app code has, because if your app is say 50% made from other packages, well then 50% of your app is only ever covered, right? So just think about that for a second. That's another point that I was chatting to someone about the other day. Test coverage is great, but it's only testing your own code, right? So it's not testing necessarily everyone else's code as well, right? For completeness. There is on the first point, how to create test coverage. There's tools and utilities for that, and lots of fun stuff. There is a great package called Coverage, funny enough, by the Dart team, and that you can activate a global coverage tool. And this talks about running coverage with Dart. It's essentially the same with Flutter, and it generates a coverage report. And then there's I can't remember what's the format of coverage reports. There's
LCOV file.
That's it, LCOV. So LCOV is the format of the coverage reports, which are basically like line coverage reports. It's about what line, and then was it covered, what the line number was, and was it covered. And basically LCOV reports, there's a command line. Is it called LCOV? Is the command line app? It's been around a long time. LCOV.LibreOffice. Am I thinking that's the right one? Probably. Basically, the LCOV tool has been around a long time, and it will generate HTML reports from LCOV files, and it will actually get the source file and actually do this nice little thing where it shows you highlights all the lines, and you can actually see what sort of coverage, and it works out what the percentages are and all this kind of fun stuff. There's lots of ways of doing it.
What's great is LCOV is not Flutter dependent. It was actually a long-standing standard. We used to do it all the time with Perl programs, generating LCOV files. But that means there's a lot of LCOV tools out there that aren't just related to Dart and Flutter.
So I suspect, by looks of, sorry, I'm just hanging around because I forget where I got it from. There is the official LCOV repo. This is it here from the Linux test project. I'll pop that in the chat. I don't think you need to download it from here. This is more about source code releases. But you'll probably find the LCOV tool in your platform package management. So, i.e., if you've got what's the one on what's the package manager that you get for development on Mac?
Brew?
There's a deal.
Brew install LCOV probably will do what you want it to do on Mac.
There are some LCOV packages also in the pub, so there are some ones that are specific to the Dart and Flutter community as well.
Yeah, there's a brew formula. I just checked out. There's a brew formula for brew install LCOV, and that'll install the same thing. But basically, you write your little script, your little coverage script that you can run like using Melos or Flutter scripts or just a shell script or whatever, and it runs the coverage thing that generates the coverage from Dart, that generates an LCOV file, and that LCOV file can then be processed by LCOV into a HTML file, and then you can either open that up or publish it or do whatever you want inside your GitHub Actions, that kind of thing. There are also coverage websites that will do coverage reports and give you this little coverage. If you've got an open source package, obviously if it's private, you have to pay for those services. Do you guys remember some of the open source ones? I can go find one that I know of. It's going to escape me right now. CodeCov, that's the one. Codecov.io. Basically, let me bring it up. Again, this is I think this is, if you remember, it's free for open source packages. So if you're doing an open source package, they're saying on pub, you can use this. There's a basic free package. I won't go into it, but again, this supports Dart and Flutter, and it does a coverage report. And you also get the little symbol, the little like tag that you can put on your pub, on your README file on GitHub and on Braincon, on GitHub and on pub.dev, and it will show you how much potential coverage you've got. These are all great. There's tons of these sites out there that provide this kind of service. This is not just CodeCov. There's lots. So,
and one other testing hint: if you fix a bug in your code, make sure you have a test that verifies you fixed the bug, and leave that in there in your regression folder.
Yeah,
because you never want to backslide over something that somebody reported. Now you fixed. You don't ever want that to go backwards.
And if it slipped through one time, it can slip through again.
We use these terms. There's lots of basically calling different testing, right? So you have regression testing, which is essentially what we just said. Like you want to test to make sure that your bugs are fixed and they haven't regressed, they haven't come back in for some other behavior. There's a thing called emergent behavior. I just want to quickly cover this, which is when you might fix two things, but when they run together, a completely new behavior comes out of these two things from running. That you literally, you can look at your code running and go, I did not program my code to work that way. How the hell is it doing this? And that literally is emergent behavior. That is multiple things are happening that when running together in tandem makes a completely new behavior come out. And these things you cannot predict. So it's very key to run those regression tests that you can validate that this emergent behavior has not taken over and they've regressed.
And that's how Skynet forms. So be very careful. Skynet came right from that emergent behavior.
I was wearing my Stages of Debugging T-shirt yesterday.
Okay.
And then what's another one? Smoke tests. Another one. There's lots of terms for these, but these are like just ways that you can run different levels of testing because there's a point where too much testing becomes detrimental to the effort, as we said, slows down the development process. So again, you want to do like your full set of everything before you do a release to make sure you haven't.
I don't know how many people do this, but some people also I've seen run tests against the APIs they consume to make sure those haven't changed with respect to what the code is that they know they built according to. So that's also something you can test.
Yeah, so you can also do version pinning, right? So a lot of APIs, you give it a version to solve that problem, and then you actually have when they release a new version of the API, then you literally put a ticket in your pipeline, which is like okay or whatever, board, whatever, and which says upgrade to this next version of the API, and then you're literally making that effort to do those things to keep ahead. Yeah. I can't remember what we're starting on now.
Well, the one thing I want to... I'm sorry. I think you're done.
Yeah. No, go for it. Go for it.
I was just going to say the one thing I wanted to say is I'll get into arguments with people when they say that basically all testing is good and that more testing is never worse. I'm like, no, if you're testing something that can't ever fail because you've got it covered with other tests, that's wasted time. It's wasted time developing the test. It's wasted time running the test.
Yeah.
So no, you still want to be smart about testing, and it's not just throw anything up against the wall. You want to be smart about what you choose to do. And with that,
yeah,
I'm kind of at my time. I'm turning into a pumpkin.
Okay.
Bye, Danielle. Thanks for stopping by.
Well, thank
See
you,
you next
Johnny.
week, maybe. And I wanted to add to that I've seen people sometimes do the equivalent of testing that 2 + 2 = 4. And I mean that in the sense that they're testing something like, does RiverPod work right? Well, Remy wrote a huge bunch of tests to make sure that works. You don't need to test the raw power of RiverPod in your app. You can presume that if you're using RiverPod properly, you're going to get the right answers always. If your tests do end-to-end of your integration with the RiverPod, yes, that's fine. But don't just test RiverPod. That's silly. Remy has done that for you already.
Too many. I've seen that too many times where people test they're essentially testing the package they're consuming or something else, which is fine if the package didn't have tests, right? But if go check, right? Especially when it's a well-known author is well used. Anyway, let's move on. Next questions because we're going to get come. Let's
Paco again is still there, although he just left, but he'll have to take this answer off the air, I guess.
Was he saying bye to? I think he was saying bye to.
No, he was saying bye to us. I need to jump to have a great rest of the week. Yes. So he's gone, but he's taking the answer off the air apparently. Is there a way to create a matrix of several different test variants? I suppose.
So you can create different entry points for your tests. So when you do Flutter test, by default, it just runs all tests. But you can give an entry point that also runs other tests. You can just import them and call them main methods or run the tests. So you can actually just create like individual test files that essentially are different variations or different sets of tests that you want to perform. I think that's the best. I think that maybe explains what you want. You can also parameterize your tests, right? So if you want to kind of test it with different inputs and outputs and things like that, you can do all that kind of stuff as well.
There's one thing that I found really interesting. It's being used in FP Dart, which is property testing. I forget the name of the package. It's the name of some wizard of some kind. If I look at the source code to FP Dart, I can probably find it. But it's great because you basically describe a function that takes an int and another int and needs to return an int as its result. And it will randomize things and find the ranges at which the ints don't work anymore or whatever. Really, really slick stuff. What is the name of that package? It's in the dependencies for FP Dart. If I can just find that real quick.
I'm just going to take a look at that right now whilst you're doing that.
But it's called, the notion is called prop testing, which is that you don't want to work out specific formulas ahead of time. You just want to say, try ints in the range of 1 to 255 is the only way this should work. And if you give it an int outside, it should break. And you can tell it that, and it will find it. GLaDOS, yes, there we go. Named after the portal gadget.
Yeah, there's the portal robot thing, right? GLaDOS. Property-based testing. There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll post that in the chat. I don't know anything about it, but it sounds interesting. I should try it out sometime.
It's on my list of things to play with when I get a little extra time, and so far, extra time is a premium these days, so it's kind of fun. Yeah. Anyway, check that out. So that's one answer to that. Is there a different answer to that as well, or can we move on?
I think we can move on.
Let's move on. Push the button. How do apps like Wolt, Uber, and others keep updating the state of the driver on the map? Well, that's interesting. Do they use WebSocket connections? Probably. How would this be done in general? Aren't location updates a bit heavy? How much does an electron weigh?
So, I mean, okay. So let's just take a step back here.
Sure.
Only doing these updates when you're in front of the app.
Right.
That's the key thing, right? Which means because as soon as the app goes away in the background, you need to disconnect everything. You should not be doing any networking stuff. Obviously, if you're running a live trip, for example, they have the notification in the sort of like in Android, for example, you have like the ongoing thing. That's because it's running in the background, doing these sorts of updates. But yeah, you're right. It is. So first of all, I need to explain like how do you think you receive a stream of data like a TV show or this stream, for example? It's active right now and it's data streaming to you. And this is just a socket connection. That's literally the basis of everything, right? The term WebSocket comes from that, right? WebSocket is slightly different, and that it is a HTTP connection that has been basically upgraded to a socket connection, or should I say downgraded? So they call it upgrading.
Side-graded.
But yeah, but a HTTP connection works on a socket. So what you're actually doing is you're going from socket to HTTP, and then there's another layer on top, which is WebSockets, to make it appear and act like sockets, which is what's underneath HTTP. Anyway, the point here is it also actually is quite nice because WebSocket is supported by HTTP 2 and HTTP 3, which supports bidirectional streaming, multiplexed connections, which is really good. Anyway, especially
I was going to say WebSocket also adds a layer of having multiple connections during one connection, which is sort of interesting. So you basically build the circuit, and then on the circuit you can send multiple streams.
So yeah, that's essentially how they do it. Now it is. WebSocket is just two-way communication. If you use Firebase, for example, you get this for free. Firebase again just uses socket connections to monitor the database, and they actually use gRPC, which has a bidirectional system built into it and likes WebSockets. And the way these things work, and it's standard protocol for most things. I think GraphQL also supports this in separate events channel. But the notion is that you register for something. For example, let's say, for example, Wolt, Uber, whatever, you start a trip and you want to get the updates for those drivers, right? Then what you do is you say register for this trip ID, and then the events come down your event stream for that trip. And you can say, once that trip's finished, you can say deregister for that event ID. You stop getting those events. So when you talk about like, let's say an Uber map, and you're looking at it and it has like all the current vehicles that are near you, right, popping up and moving around on the stream, what they're essentially doing is they start making an API call, which is send updates for this latitude, longitude, square, or whatever visible on the screen. And then they'll just have streamed down those updates of them. And all you're doing is an XY position, latitude, longitude, and a heading for the vehicle. It's not a lot of data, right? But the key thing here is they're on the screen for like seconds, maybe minutes, if you're lucky, right? Like the user is not looking at this all the time. So as long as you have maybe one consistent connection while the app is open and you're streaming that data back and forth over the connection, registering for different bits of data, that's essentially how it works. This is how Firebase works as well. Right. Coming back to how would this be done in general? That's essentially how it's done. You can use WebSockets, you just register. And the location aren't heavy. I think the key is you're not making lots of connections. Now, let me explain why. Okay. I'm trying to try and keep this simple, right? Try and keep it simple. An IP address has a number of ports attached to it. There's 65,535 ports, aka 64K of ports. The bottom 1,024 are reserved, and the top one, I think, is also one you can't get to. Reasons won't go explain to it. This gives you a range of a number. Let's just say 64,000, right? Just round it off, right? 64,000 or 63,000 or 50,000, whatever. It's a lot. However, if you have 100,000 people connecting to your site at any one time, you just only have a problem. You can only ever connect 50,000 of them because you've only got maybe one IP address that serves everyone. So now you start having to multiplex, and there's a whole thing around ephemeral ports, multiplexing connections, and that's how these big things like Stack Overflow does this. If you're on Stack Overflow, you're on the website, and suddenly you see an upvote take place right in front of your eyes, or you're on Twitter and you see the like count change or whatever, or Facebook or whatever. They are all WebSockets. They are all active connections. And that means every active concurrent user right now using that service has a live connection that takes up one of these ports on a provider, basically, on a hosting provider. So WebSockets are great and they can be awesome, but they can also be complicated when you start getting very large and very busy. That is not, that's why it's very important to think about your application from a perspective. As soon as they leave your app, you use the widgets binding observer, for example, widgets observer, to monitor the app resume and app pause state, and then you can connect and disconnect that WebSocket appropriately, because you do not want to have WebSockets maintained for a long period of time, because you'll run out of those ports. So yeah, it's only for the people that currently using your app that are in front of it right now that should be having those ports open. All right.
So you just said the bottom 1024 ports. I just want to give you a piece of trivia about that you may not know. The ports between 1000 and 1024 are not used by the IANA at all for any official protocols, because Unix reserved 1024 ports. The Windows people got it wrong and reserved the first 1000 ports. So there's that gap of 24 ports that disagree between the two major implementations, from WinSock to TCP stack from Berkeley. And as a result, there are 24 ports that they can't use for privileged only operations because they don't know who you're talking to.
For the reasons that are historical right now, the bottom, so for example, HTTP, which is hypertext, that's port 80. These are like reserved ports. If you're on it's X/services, I think, on Unix-based systems, which gives you the list of all the ports and their names and what they're used for. And each one of these different protocols would be given a port. And this way you could consume a service from a provider based on that. Not everything was HTTP. And even nowadays, everything still is not HTTP. When you use streaming like this is RTMP or some other sort of streaming protocol, and that goes over a different port as well. Mm-hmm. But I won't go into ports and how IPs work in networking, because that's a whole thing, and you can go read up about that if you don't know about it. However, that bottom 1024. So example, HTTPS is 443. There's a common set of ports, and because of these are being used by this common protocol, they were set as like reserved. Right? These are system applications. These are protocol servers that are running on a system that need to be reserved. That cannot be reserved for third-party applications consuming ports all the time, right? So the ports, by the way, when you actually request for a port, and you can do this in. So to be clear, we're talking about this. You don't have to use WebSockets, right? I just want to cover this briefly, because I think people will find this interesting. Hang on, Dart.dev.
Further down the rabbit hole, but okay.
Further down the rabbit hole. Why not? We're here. We're learning. Everyone's
our
learning,
show.
Right? Everyone likes. It's our show. We get to pick it. Tough right. If you look at secure socket or socket, either way, secure socket basically runs TLS and SSL over the socket, or you can just use the socket log. These are just basic principal classes that go directly to the network adapter on the device. And in these, if I can find it, you'll have connect or start connect for the asynchronous version. I can't remember. I won't go into it right now. But anyway, and in here you have port. If you specify, you can see here source port 0 by default. This makes it ephemeral. This makes it automatically choose a port. This means that on your IP address, on your mobile device, you still have that same limit. If you try and connect to a server in like a loop 65,000 times, it will fail. It will run out of ports, right? Whilst they're being connected, it'll just run out of ports. But the point here is, the idea is you connect to a specific port, but your source port, that is the port on your machine that connects the two endpoints, that is 0 by default because it's ephemeral. It will just choose one at random, but you can still run out of those as well. But these are complex problems. I think there's other protocols that make lots of connections, like a lot of peer-to-peer network stuff that makes a lot of connections to lots of different peers, and that can run you out of ports very quickly. Anyway, long story short, but there you go.
Yeah. We're deep in the rabbit hole. Let's move on.
Deep in the rabbit hole. Right, next question. James Ford.
Other than Flutter and Dart, what languages do you guys work with? I work with English, pretty much.
I'm terrible.
Pretty much my primary language is English. I speak poquito español, pero no más.
I don't do any of those other things. No,
Okay.
when it comes to programming languages, though, right? So predominantly, here's interesting, right? Predominantly, I call myself a programming language. What's it called? A polyglot.
Polyglot.
Right?
Yeah.
Right, because you get this with also languages. You learn the principles of a spoken language, like the verbiage and nouns and how it all connects. And you can pick up other languages that are based in like Latin roots and all this kind of stuff, right? Same goes with programming, right? There's a root of all programming languages, like the one they were based off of or similar to. And so there's a syntax expectation of syntax that you get from losing lots of languages. So when it comes to pick up a new language, normally it's not too difficult once you've got a lot under your belt. But on a day-to-day basis, Flutter and Dart, well, Flutter is not language, Dart is. But I'll be using Java/Kotlin, depending on Android, Swift and Objective-C for iOS or macOS, and C++ and C# for Windows, and that sort of area. Those are the kind of the primaries for those different platforms. It varies. And
I've been known to do a bit of Perl coding in my time, so that would probably be really important. But I've also I stopped listing languages on my resume after I learned like 50 languages. 50 was plenty, because it was like to address what you were saying, that it's you start to see the patterns of implementation, which also then sort of forms families of languages. Like all the OOP languages kind of work the same, and all of the Prolog style languages kind of work the same, and all of the modern functional programming languages kind of work the same. They'll have nuances in terms of how they, the kinds of semantics you get to in each language, and then the syntax to express it in. But it's interesting watching now the evolution of Dart as it's gone through. I call it 3 different 45-degree turns in direction, because now we are slowly getting a more and more powerful language that is adopting some of the other patterns from other languages, not to overload the word patterns there, but just the styles of interaction. And it is helping the problem set, the problem space that we can address easily. Ultimately, all languages are Turing complete, right? So you can use any language to do anything. But how easy it is the question.
I was trying to find, like, I did actually do a list once, and I can't find it. And I think it was a tweet I did once, and it ended up being like 50 or something, right? I think that there's, as I said, there's an aspect of languages. Like again, I used to go to PHP for scripting. Now I go to Dart, right? Because I find Dart and the standard library of Dart to be good. I also know Golang, and I used to use Golang for systems level stuff. I used to go to that. I don't know Rust, and I really do want to. When I can find the time for Rust, I want to have a look at that. And I think it was Graphene was the other one by Google as a replacement for C++. I may have that wrong, but that's another one. Carbon, was it Carbon or Graphene? I can't remember. And these are ones that like one. There's so many of these things, right? And they all have their place and their use. So I think it's about finding the right language for the right job. But for example, like doing CLI based things, I'm just jumping on Dart now, so most of the time. So
yeah. And I'm pushing hard on things like Haskell and Scala, because that's going to give me more functional programming knowledge. And FP Dart just hit 1.0 today, and just before this show. And I'm like, oh, we'll read all the new documentation. I've been tracking the project for a long time, and I've been talking about it a lot here. But I'm learning functional programming through Sandro's wonderful descriptions here. He just added a whole 0 time to functional programming with using FP Dart as the tool that you're learning how to do it with. Very amazing stuff. He writes really wonderful stuff. He now has a repo that he's building out on how to use FP Dart together with RiverPod to talk to databases. It's it's some brilliant work on his part, and I wish him the best of luck with that, and I'm happy to promote him whenever I can.
Cool. All right. Next.
When I try to add a list of something to a list of something using add in Dart, I can already hear the rest of the question without even getting there. The method just copies a pointer. I knew it. Into a list of lists. The future changes in list of something will therefore affect the result. I think the next question is tied to this. Go down to the yeah. There can be an option. No, maybe not. Can there be an optional argument to create an independent object? I think that's part trying to solve the problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me unpack this for a second here. When I try to add a list of something to a list of something using add, it just copies a pointer of list of list.
Yeah.
The future change of list of something will affect the result. Okay. So first of all, if you're making a list of lists, then yeah, changing any one of those lists inside is going to, because it is the list, right? You've put inside. However, if you copy the items, you say add all, and you're copying the items from one list into another, and change from the original list will not be affected in the new list, right? And I think that this is the difference. Like a list, you have to think about a list being an object in itself, and it references each other object that's in its indices, right? In its pigeonhole boxes, basically. And if you make any change to one of those things, it's going to be represented by that list. The list is not a immutable object of its contents. So that's always been the case. You can make something that most people don't realize you can do if you're working with immutable objects. So you're working with this notion of a model that contains lists. Always use list dot unmodifiable. So if you go check this out, basically it's a constructor for list, which makes a list that you cannot modify to solve this very problem, right? So whenever you have a list and an immutable object, it should be a unmodifiable list, because that way you can't mutate it by mistake, right? So you might be given a list outside of the model, then like you're handing a field from a model, and you can never break it by mistake. There's also unmodifiable set, map, base, list, everything, right? And again, these are right.
And the fast immutable collection package, which does that for hierarchies.
Okay, there you go, and that as well. There's also was it KT Dart as
fast
well?
Immutable collections, fast immutable collections, FIC.
Yeah. So, but yeah, built in you've got these things built in as well, right? So, all different data types. So that kind of covers that. But when you're trying to add a list of something, So there's also so coming back to this, maybe this comes to the next point here. Can there be an optional argument to create an independent object? I think this is based off that previous question, and when inside list. Literally has some clone operations. So, for example, if you use list unmodifiable, you can then you want to modify that list. You then say list.of or list.from. One of these I think has been deprecated. I can't remember. Yeah. So list.of keeps the generic. List.from does not keep the generic, or didn't keep the generic. Yeah. Iterable of elements doesn't have the generic here. So just to be clear, you should probably be using list.of for those that are not playing along. So you can see here it's slightly different. This gives you the generic, right, and maintains the type. You will probably get into type safety problems if you're not careful. So just let you know that there's slight different semantics between the two, but for the most part, list of is what you want. So basically, you can pass in as the elements your unmodifiable list, and you've now made a modifiable list, which is a completely separate object, but they reference the same internal objects, right? That's the key. Then you modify that. Then you can make a new list of unmodifiable from that, and then put that back into your model with copy with. So this is kind of like something you can do. Also, using the square brackets makes a new list of something. So you can also use the ... what's it called? Not cascade. Yeah, cascade. No, ... cascade.
Spread.
What's it called?
Spread.
Sorry, yeah. You can use a spread operator with like square brackets. So it's like square bracket, like square. I'll just type in here. Square bracket ... blah. Or what do you call it? List of something. This list of something. Square bracket. And what you've done there is essentially made a new list, which clones the contents of the old list into the new one, which is like a little shortcut as well. For essentially, it's the same as doing like list and then add all or list of something.
And we discussed in the chat just a moment ago, you didn't see that, Simon, but we talked about shallow versus deep copy, that what you just showed was a shallow copy. And also things you were earlier with list of is shallow copies, where if the list contains other lists, those aren't cloned. They're merely the sort of, I guess you call them pointers to the lists are duplicated, but not the actual list contents themselves, because that's not a deep clone that way.
It always works at the top level because, and this is literally, I think pretty much every language. I can't think of, maybe some of the scripting language work different, like Lua script, I believe. But for the most part, everything works at the top level because to traverse like a huge object would take a long time, and you might be doing that like lots of times, and you don't get to choose between the two. So you do the shallow one, and then if you wanted to do the deep like copy or a deep check, you get to choose that at the time. It's a shame that there's no built-in like deep copy commands. I do agree with that one. I feel like there's no reason why they couldn't be in the framework and be optimized in C++, because most of the time you end up doing it in Dart as like a recursive function. There is, however, deep collection equality, which is built into the framework, into the collection stuff. And there's also, most people don't realize this, there's a global called list equals, which is a global method in Foundation. That's how you're supposed to compare two lists, right? And you can see here it compares to another bit, so it goes through and compares each object. And there's also set equals, map equals. But if you want to do deep, this is shallow, by the way. If you want to do deep collection, then use the deep collection quality. And again, you just create one of these objects or unordered if you don't care about the order, and then you call the equals method on whatever it is. Now, collection can be map, set, or list, right? So any one of those, and that will do what you want it to do as well. Yeah,
there actually is a way to do a deep clone if you have isolates available. So everything but the web, you can use a send port and a receive port, and you can send an object through the port and grab it on the other side, and it's a deep clone.
Why do that hacky thing? Really?
You can do it in one line, though. It's one line of code.
I think there's probably an issue ticket for deep copy somewhere that you can go thumbs up. Let's move on.
What's funny is it calls the function in the C code called deep copy. So it really is calling the thing you want to call.
Move on. That's just so hacky. Come on.
No, that's incredible. I'm going to do a screencast about it soon. So just watch my channel for a while. You'll see how to do deep copy two different ways. One, by doing recursive stuff using patterns, which is the way I originally started. And then somebody on one of the chats says, why don't you just use send port, receive port? And I went, oh, you're right. That'll work too, huh? Anyway.
All right.
Anyway, how to order children on a list view with index and key. Let's say list view B plus A, but on the UI, it will show A at the top. That is somewhat undecipherable to me. Okay. Simon?
How to order children on a list view with index/key. Let's say list view of B plus A, but on UI, it will show A at top. Oh, he means that you've got a list object, which B plus A, and you want to show A at the top. Well, the answer there is create a new list and order it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
The key here, right, is that if you're joining two like B plus A, you're making a new list already, right? You're joining two separate sets of data, two collections of data together. You're making a new collection out of that. So you're already doing that. So out of that new collection, you can then order it. You can just use a dot sort. So for example, if we go jump back to here, the list class has a sort method built onto it. If I can find it here. The reason why this is optional, by the way, and not needed, is because each of your elements can so your items in the array, in this case the E here, can actually implement comparable. If they're comparable to themselves, to the same type, right, then it self sorts, right, in that sense, right, like when you run the sort function, so you don't have to specify a function. That's kind of nice, kind of handy, but it doesn't really help a lot of the time. What you're probably looking for is what is for create unknown. It's called a splay tree. Let's think splay tree map. Sure, let's just do map right now. And this allows you to do a sort of an ordered list as you go. I believe there's I feel like there's is it linked hash list? I can't remember. Which offers a constructor that takes Be the one time I want it and I can't find it. I'm pretty sure that there's a list one as well. But anyway, display tree map, for example, this is if you want to create a map that sorts itself or self-balances. And again, there's all this information here about how you can use it and how it works. But again, you pass a comparator function to your constructor for whatever it is, and then that will then each time you insert something, it sorts it as it inserts it, which is a lot more efficient rather than like inserting everything and then sorting it. The way that they're internally structured can be more efficient. I won't go into it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's a sorted list as well. But to be honest, just grab a list, sort it. There's also the collection package. Not this Dart collection one, but the external collection one also has a bunch of helpful, what's it called? Has like a bunch of helpful sorting functions.
He has a second part to this question. Second part.
If I'm not wrong, I've seen it somewhere. I was key indexed to ordered children, something like semantic. I mean, sorry, I'm again, it doesn't order the widgets on the screen. It just provides a semantic meaning to the order, right? So if you look at list view, for example, you'll see that it has adds, where's the constructor? Let's see, builder. You'll see in here, it says add semantic indexes. Basically, that is all that's doing is saying item one, I think it says index 1, index 2, and it wraps each of your widgets in your list view by default, this is, with a box that just says index 1, index 2, it's a semantic. So when someone's blind or impaired, you know, they can scroll through and they hear like with like the speech stuff, index 1, index 2, and then it reads the contents of it. So basically the idea here is it just does that. It doesn't actually change the ordering. So it just keeps the ordering of the data and then wraps each one with an index with a semantic meaning. Yeah, I mean, again, your original question here is I feel is quite saying what I just said, which is you joining 2, but you want to order it based, show A at the top. That's just a comparator, right? You just go make a comparator that says, oh, if it's a class of A, return -1. If left and right is both A, then return -0. And then, like, you know, if it's A and B is different, then return 1. And that it's just, you can go look up comparators, and there's a bunch of stuff, comparable, comparator, and sort functions in the framework to find all the information about how these work. But this is standard pattern in all programming languages about how you do sorting. Basically, is it left or right or the same as the current objects you're comparing?
We should show how to use a Dart 3 pattern to do that kind of matching, where it can match on an A and an A versus an A and a B versus a B and a B. That would be cool.
So here you go. So it does explain it here. Oh, we should do that, yeah. Explain some of it. But yeah, you need to be cautious that it does explain here. Well, I think it should explain here. But basically, if you compare, you could get yourself into trouble if you don't do your comparisons right. If the two, for example, let's say you want to do, let's say you want to sort a list based on most, like maybe modified date, timestamp of a model, then by the title. So it's date, then alphabetical. If the two objects have the same date, that you normally return 0, then instead of that, you return back based on comparing to the two title strings. So for example, string and int are all comparable. They will have a compare to function and implement the interface. So it will compare two strings and return their relationship. So if you just want to sort something based on a field, you can just, inside your comparator, take that field and say compare to the other dot field, and boom, you're done. Really simple. So that would be the same on int and a bunch of the other stuff. Not obviously on lists because they can composite, as we just spoke about. Also to be mentioned that you can also do string dot to lowercase compared to other dot string dot to lowercase, and this makes it in case sensitive. If you don't do that, they are case sensitive. That means if one starts with a capital letter, it's going to appear before the lowercase ones or after. I can't remember, but whatever.
Before.
It's ASCII sequence. I can't remember what it is before. Yeah, it was before.
Well, it's character order sequence, including the entire UTF-16 character.
Yeah. But you know what I mean.
Blah, 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 blah. Right.
blah blah. blah
Randall,
right?
the voice of reason in the corner. All right. Yes. Or the annoying
Next-
voice.
Oh,
And
we did-
I
we
just
did
showed
this.
that too. Yep.
Oh, you just
So
said
on
that.
to the
Okay,
next
cool. Moving on to the next one.
Yeah. How to prepare for an interview.
Watch last week's show.
Sleep. Sleep well. Yeah.
I think every
That's a
week we
shame.
talk about. Sorry, Mohammed, but every week we do talk about this. So what I'd say, watch some of the other shows because we have a lot of other people talk about this quite often.
Yes.
But I think if you talk about how to prepare for an interview, I mean, if you shouldn't need to. So to be, there's two snarky things to this, right? So first of all, you're going to be prepared if you're right for the job, right? So that's one thing, right?
Yeah.
But also, it depends on the type of interview. If they got some coding thing, which is like, oh, you should like run this algorithm to sort this something. Programming to like developer job interviews are really hard because they've done a lot of different ways and they can be really complicated. And I think the answer is be honest and open. If you don't know something, say you're willing to learn, you're willing to open up and learn about it, or you heard about this and you're on that Humpday Q&A show, you heard about that FP Dart thing and you haven't tried it yet. Just be yourself. And if you're right for the role, they'll pick you, right? You're talking about like preparing for an interview. Like, yeah, you need to be prepared for the job. That's really what you need to think about. Be prepared for the job. So if the job, for example, if the job, what do you call it? Job request, whatever, job board spec, whatever, job spec, whatever it is, says, okay, we need you to job posting, whatever. Yeah. It says Riverpod. You must know Riverpod, right? Or we prefer people to know Riverpod. Well, then don't go to the interview if you don't know Riverpod. Go learn Riverpod first, right? Or go read up about it so that you're not going into this thing, because the last thing you want to be doing is getting a job and then going hit literally shoving this massive book down, like not book, this massive project down your table, going, here's a whole Riverpod project. We want you to do this, this, and this, and you're going, I've only done Riverpod for a day, right? Well, then that's it. You're gone, right?
Yep.
So yeah. Think about what you're trying to what the role entails, I think, and then learn.
You can always be preparing every spare moment of every day because there is plenty to do to try and flex your muscles and get those built. You can go to the coding gym every day and get that muscle body that you need to be out there actually applying for interviews. So while you're waiting to get an interview, you shouldn't be just idling. You shouldn't be just playing Pokemon or whatever, right? You should be doing useful things. If you want to get yep. Next, maybe.
Next. Final
How
question.
handle internet connection during an API implementation? When the internet connection gone during API implementation, then how to stop the API request? Well, I think it kind of stops itself once that connection goes.
Yeah. So you'll get a socket exception is the base type. And then you can then say, and you can check it's called a socket exception, which is we spoke about sockets earlier, but there you go, it's called a socket exception. That's the base type. And then you'll get whatever the operating system areas and what the internet address and port you're connected to, and some various other things. You also may get a what's the host lookup one? Host lookup, what's that? Lookup failed.
NS lookup? Maybe. No, I don't know.
There's a lookup failed or something like that, which is like, I feel like there should be like, it's a shame that it's IO exception. Oh, hang on a minute. It might be in here. WebSocket exception, socket exception, HTTP exception. No. There's another one which is based around like it failed to look up the host name because reasons, DNS reasons. So you said how to handle it. I mean, the idea is that you should catch the exception and then handle it. Like, so catch the IO exception class like that, which is all the like that's the parent class to all of these, and then go, okay, my input output failed. Return back the error status that the API failed and to try again later. Or you might have, so for example, I'll give you an example here. I mean, this is a really good example, hopefully. You're on Gmail, you write an email, you press the send button, and it disappears. Poof, gone, right? What happens if you're offline? Oh, no, it still does that. It still just disappears. And it's trying to send in the background. If it can't send, it may alert you saying we tried to send, but it can't do it, and we'll retry in and they will have like a countdown or something, right? Like there's ways of notifying. There'll be a little thing to the user. They don't really care. And sometimes it might even retry multiple times before even alerting the user. And these are all things that you can do in handling your API request, depending on what you're doing. Let's say they just filled out an entire form of screens. The last thing you want to do is take their input, disappear from the screen saying you're sending it. And when it fails, you just say error, right? And you drop the request on the floor, because that user's going to be pissed. That user's going to be pissed. Going, oh, I forgot I was connected to this coffee network and I didn't press the sign-in button. So now I have to go through all these forms and to upload all my details and pictures and whatever else to submit that form again, right? That's definitely not what you want to do. You want to have a way of recovering from that situation. That's why it's called an exception, not an error, right? And recover from those errors gracefully. But that's all about how you build your application. These are the sad paths, right? We call the happy path, which is like when everything goes right. You need to deal with the unhappy parts, the sad parts, the things that don't go right. You need to think about every possible contingency. And this is where programming kind of fails with estimations a lot of the time, because people go, oh, there you go, just do this and it's done. But what we can't estimate for is like all the possibilities of everything that can possibly go wrong. And that's what makes it complicated. And you learn these things as you go. But yeah, definitely, if you're doing networking, handle IO exceptions and gracefully.
Which is why functional programming is cool, because your values can be either the real value that worked or the fake value that broke. So it's kind of nice that you can have that as a single value that you can store in a variable and pass back from a function.
Or you can use records to do the same thing. Anyway, right.
Sort of. Not like you can't put methods on records. Anyway, okay.
You can do extensions on records. You can't
chain with monads though. It doesn't work that way. There's no chaining.
I actually did this really cool thing the other day. It was when we were speaking the other day, which was adding an extension to a record to do some cool stuff as well. But yeah, there's all these kind of things with records that you can do, which is all still I'm still learning about. It's all still fun.
I do believe we are through with questions. So Simon, get out your magic fingers and let's do some live coding.
How long do we have? We have a little bit of time. So I just thought I think we'll just do some live coding. I've got a little project that I'm working on here that is open, which will be open source or remote open source right now. And then that will that I think will end the show on that. And if maybe it will spice some people to ask some questions about what I'm doing here. Maybe. We'll see.
There have been people already asking me for FP Dart examples. Maybe in a week or two, I can do some stuff on live coding.
Maybe
FP Dart.
we should ask Sandra if he can come on to the show.
Oh yeah, that'd be really cool.
That'd be fun.
That'd be definitely
fun. Audio. Why is you not working? Hang on.
No, I can't hear why it's not working.
Hold that thought.
I'm holding it. It's holding. It's on hold. Your call is important to us.
There we go. I hear you now.
We'll process people.
Please hold.
In the order
is important to us. Yes, indeed. So, as I said, we're doing this Flutter Dev Camp here in again. It's open to a wide range of people. We're doing this Flutter Dev Camp, and I needed a way of us demonstrating how to do state management. And we were like, well, how do we do that effectively? Because the problem here is too many examples of applications end up being just that, like silly examples of here's how you connect these two components together. It's never like a holistic point of view. So we dug around and we purchased a design made by a third-party designer on one of these lovely websites that you go to. And this is a Figma design for a shopping app. There you go, called Shop Wow, which is just some made up shop. And the idea is that what we're going to be doing is developing this application between now and next Thursday. I think we can sort of do the entire thing by then. We'll see. But the principle is we needed something that we can give to the people that are coming along. So if you sign up to the Flutter Dev Camp, you'll have access to the source code coming along. And then they can take this and go, okay, we're going to say, let's build this with Riverpod. Let's build this with Block. Let's build this with Get It. And then you have a really good foundation of how each of the different state management technologies work, with this kind of stuff. So at the moment, you can see here, so we might have like foot splash, sign up, validation, promo spots. We got a little home screen here with, again, a promo carousel, the top selling items, featured items, that kind of thing. Again, you might have like a newsletter spot or some promo spots. And when you tap on an item, you'll get the details of the item, the ability to share it, add it to your cart, see similar items, how you do all that kind of stuff, right? Then look at the reviews of a product, review your wish list, view your cart, items for delivery, payment, seeing your profile. And then there's a category screen as well, which kind of like deep links you into other areas and seeing your previous orders. So this is like your sort of your general, I guess, shopping app, your e-commerce app.
I'd say looks good. Ship it.
right. It's just so many people I've seen heard this sometimes like, oh, that looks great. Ship it. It's like, and this is a picture.
These are pictures. This is like confusing a picture of your wife with your actual wife. That is really not a mistake to make.
Yeah, exactly right. So what we're going to do here, let's see if this I can get this running. So I started the development of this, and a lot of people ask about how you get something started. So I think we'll talk briefly about what I've done so far, and then how we might achieve those things. So you have to wait for I'm not going to talk about the splash stuff because A, I haven't finished it off, but B, I did a whole talk about that at FlutterCon, and the video will be out, and that will cover exactly what I do with this. I'm going to skip the sign up screens briefly for the moment because we're, I mean, we can add that in there, but it's not like the aim of this is about the aim of building this is not to actually have it linked up to any back end platform or system, right? It's about having the application be there in terms of the app side of things, the state management side of things, right? Because that's what the course and the material is about. So that's key.
I have to give you an important thing. If you are trying to build an app and you have pictures like this from your designer or maybe just from your imagination, do not come into Discord, show a picture and go, how do I make this? The first answer I will give you is screen grab, image, full screen. In other words, a static picture, because you aren't talking about the dynamics of how that works. And that is the only thing we can help you with to implement. We can't help you to implement with the letter G. We're not like that. We were looking at, those come from a table. Okay, then, where's the table sit at? We have to know the semantics behind these pictures to help you. So just to let you know, if you come to Discord, you may get an answer, a snarky answer from you. If you say, "How do I do this?" That's the snarky answer.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is. There's not like also one single answer to that, right? So it can get complicated. So I'll make things. Well, I can't make things. Hopefully, everyone can see that big enough. Maybe I should.
The letters are a little tiny, but
does that help? I'm going to turn off the thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see if that helps.
Thank you. Make your ID.
I'll make the font size bigger in just a second here, but briefly, so what we've got here is sort of a simple structure, right? We've got a main entry point, just that main entry point, really simple, really basic, nothing amazing there. And then we've got sort of a top level app, assets, theme, nice stuff, right? App, simple stuff, assets, which is just like, a nice way of referring to. I do this quite often. This is just like a nice way of you refer to this symbol. That way, if you change the file name, you're not changing a bunch of places in your application. It helps you organize and see all your assets in one place. And then theme, again, how to handle theme appropriately, like theme overlays, light themes, how to do your own custom app theme. This is all in here, right? All of this is going to be done with. There's going to be no external libraries. This has all been done with Flutter and Dart. So there's no packages involved in doing this. It's up to the people on the course to actually take and work with a package, right? I have something else I gave my talk in FlutterCon, which is I always do this, which is a very common practice for me, which is a bunch of global constants, which just defines widgets and things that don't change. And the nice thing about like vertical padding, horizontal padding is that which edge and sets overrides the plus operator. So you can say vertical padding 16 plus, horizontal padding 8, and it becomes really nice and simple and to visualize that. So and then we've maybe got a couple of like top level models. I know there's category model, navigation model, and then each of the features. Currently, these are screen based. So we have homepage, splash screen, the main screen, which holds the top bar and the bottom bar. By the way, this is the app running on the left as it currently is. And then we have the design. So I'm trying to give us enough room on the screen to see all these things. The design in the center there of what we want to achieve. So as you can tell, we've already got there with some of this. So I've just got the same little card repeating here. So there's a little promo thing. We've got our categories being displayed. And we have our little buttons at the top here, the logo. And then we also have our little navigation bar. I'm sorry, that's behind us. Let's get rid of our heads for a bit. There you go. And then we have our little navigation bar down the bottom here that you can interact with. So I think, so if I restart this, hot restart this, hopefully we'll get, there's our splash screen as well. And it just after 2 seconds navigates away. Just did that. Like there's some nice things. We can do a nice transition there later. For the moment, it works. And, there's your splash screen, really nice and simple. We can go look in detail later, but it's just like lay out the widgets so that they change and adjust appropriately for different screen sizes. If I go to the app level here, I'm gonna comment out that splash screen and have it go straight into the main route, so I can avoid having to load that for now, at least. All right, so we're in the main screen. Where do we want to go from here? So as I said, the main screen here this is the entire thing. We have a top nav bar, expanded custom scroll view with whatever content that we want. In this case, it's got a promo carousel, and then we have the bottom nav bar. If you notice, there's no scaffold here, right? You don't have to use a scaffold. There's no need to use all these like widgets from the framework. Here's a top nav bar. Nice and simple. This is what you see at the top here of the screen. I'll make things bigger. Sorry. Yeah, and again, like there's nothing miraculous here. It's quite straightforward widgets and things. There's yeah. I all this again will be open, and then bottom nav bar as well with the items that you see on the bottom there. These icons. There's a bottom nav bar items. Each one of them expanded, and then each one is an ink oil padding with an icon. And it colors the icon white when it's not selected, or leaves it with its original gradient from the SVG when it's loaded. So this is what we have right now. Those were done in an evening. Splash screen, getting it all set up and everything else. So I think finish off this main screen is kind of an interesting one, right? Where we have all these different like little scrollers and how you deal with this. What do you think? Are you interested in this, Reynold?
Yeah, it looks interesting. Sure. I mean, I think the crowd is sort of curious still too. So
feel free to let me know what's going on in the chat, and if there's any questions.
Not really. They're talking about is this being developed offline? I don't know what that means. Maybe it's that. Are you not talking to Firebase yet? Which makes sense.
Yeah. So this is all going to. The whole idea is this going to be operating offline. There's no reason why you shouldn't. Like we could easily. The idea is to for the back end to be it can still be online in terms of like requesting. Let's say I'm thinking about storing all the data in JSON in GitHub, and use just a raw content. What's it called? The raw request for GitHub to just go fetch that data. Right? It's not not overly complicated. Right?
Is there a repo for this already? Can we post the?
There's not a repo public at the moment. You have to wait for. You have to join the course to get the repo. Otherwise, pay attention right now and learn from it.
Or really careful screen grabs. Really careful screen grabs. I got so good. I'm working and running. Yes.
Let me adjust the editor font size, which I normally do.
You're gonna make it even smaller to make sure people don't screen grab it.
Oh yeah. Let's do that evil trick. I think 22 is a good enough size. Right. So so what we have here, I think is what we want to get to, is that this top level where the where we have this promo spot is actually what I consider the home page. That's this first tab. Let me wrong button. Let me get rid of that. So the first tab is this home screen, and when we switch tabs, we want to change the content that we're displaying as appropriate to what we see here in the designs, right? So we have our home screen. There's a wish list screen, for example, that we want to display when on the wish list, and if you notice, different header at the top. So, but we want to persist this nav bar at the bottom. So, and again, same thing on account there, cart, a little cart top, and categories. So I think with giving all that in mind, I think having a correct top level navigation here is also something that we could look at doing. Certainly where I should go to next. I think that's where I was going to next anyway. So I popped in this promo carousel, probably in the wrong place here. The promo carousel is owned by the home screen. So we'll make in our home feature, I'm going to make a directory called widgets. In that, we'll make a new file, promo carousel. Move that stuff out the main screen. Tag in as an example. Move it out. Let me know if there's any problems in or questions or anything.
Well, I'm watching chat. I'm watching.
Cool. All right, so that's the promos moved out. I do actually have promos hard coded here, so let's pass in a list of promos.
The only question I've gotten is, can people still apply for the workshop if their GitHub is pretty lame?
But can people still
sign up for the workshop? It asks for the GitHub, and they're worried that their GitHub.
Oh no, you can still sign up for the GitHub, and then after we finish the course in August, I'll make it publicly accessible. If you go to, I'm sorry if I can find the link for you. This is the one time I want to. Hang on, bear with me. Flutter. Yeah. There you go. I'll pop this in the chat somewhere. Hang on. Put it in the chat earlier, which was I've lost it again. That's it. There we go. In the chat for anyone that wants the link to sign up to the Flutter Dev Camp. So, all right, so let's go. Promos. I got these as strings right now, but I think let's make a promo model. Let's have a final string. At the moment, this is asset, but this could be URL. It's fine. Let's just move on.
Soon there's going to be inline classes. How cool is that?
Promo model.
No, wait, they're calling it extensions now. Extension something? Extension classes?
What's
got
that?
a new name for it. Inline has changed name now to extension classes, because it's really acts like an extension, but it's basically just the thin wrapper around a object.
Sure. I'm not following, but okay. I'm just going to say yeah. Not say yes.
If you haven't been following inline classes, it's like the next thing on the horizon for Dart release. Already in beta.
Asset. All right. Okay. All right. So, yeah, promos comes out. I'm just lifting this out for a second, and then we can get on with the actual stuff. So this is promo. Promo press, promo model. And I think we'll probably have. Let's just do a fix me the link to category / Oh. Right, that's enough for the promo carousel. Right, so as I said, the top nav bar here only appears on the home screen, but the bottom nav bar remains, and this is the main screen. So what we actually want to do is replace top nav bar and its content with home screen. So let's go find our home screen. Here it is here. And let's chuck in our stuff in here. So top nav bar. So here's an interesting thing that I do, which I'm actually going to do right now. So when you have a click handle like this on category item press from top nav, well, if you want to implement this widget, you're always going to have the category item for the callbacks. So instead, export it, right? Export it from the place that you actually use it. So since my callback requires this class, exporting it from here means that when I go to use top nav, it's automatically there, right? Which is also kind of a little handy tip.
Cool.
All right, so again there. All right, so now we have main screen. We can drop our top nav, fun and expanded.
Main screen turn on.
And so our
What'd
main
you say?
right. We kind of want to. So a technique that I was using the other day, actually, which I think is quite handy, depends on exactly what you're trying to achieve with this. So in this case, we have a top level nav, but when you go between the screens, you don't want to lose your widget state. Equally, do you want to load all those screens up front, right? So there's some stuff in the framework for this. So generally speaking, the layout is what you might call an index stack, right? Which is this notion that you've got children, but you're only ever displaying one index of item, right? For the main content, right? So we've got like five different sections. The problem with doing this is that once that widget is no longer, not all the children are kept, if I remember rightly. I'm going to be corrected now, so I'm going to go check. But if I remember right, the problem with index stack is it only ever visibility.maintain. Oh, look, maybe they changed it. This is equivalent to the default visibility constructor with all the maintain fields set to true. Do you know what? They may have solved this. It looks like they have. So I'm going to get corrected. This is why I check. Maybe we'll just use this then, if it's going to do what I want it to do. It looks like it does. So it adds all the children to the hierarchy. So I'm going down deep in the rabbit hole here. It's adding all the children to the view hierarchy, but then only the one that's indexed is the one that's drawn and hit tested on. Sounds exactly what I want. All right. So we need to know, first of all, what is the selected index? And we're going to, so this is based on this nav item, which is just a list of top level navigation items, each one with an icon, each one sort of kept in here. This order is the order in which it traverses to display the bottom nav. Oh, well, look, here's our first problem. So it's not, and we need this to be consistent. So let's change that. So for item in nav item dot values, and we just essentially put 1 and delete the rest. So this is item, and that's how we can do that. Now that this list matches the ordering that's inside this here, and that means that the index of the enum is also going to match. Now we need to make sure that we have enough entries in here for each one of the items in the enum. So there's another way we can deal with this. which is also common practice to do, and that is why not add a widget builder or something else to your class. I'm not sure if we can actually do that because it have to be constant.
Yeah.
You could do like we could do like private in here. You could have like top level, so let's say like home builder, right? And
I've put static functions in enum for my my dispatch for
well,
my
this is it,
page that had tabs.
yeah. So for example, this is his home page, for example, right? Just bear with me here. We're going to experiment. This is what we're here for, right? So
Yeah, you create a function that returns a widget that that takes your argument list. You type def that, and then you can just add that to the type.
Well, this is what I was just thinking here, right? Like, what is it that we're actually trying to achieve?
Yeah.
Let me.
There's no problem that can't be solved without one layer of indirection.
Exactly.
Or at least adding some indirection.
We do something like this. This is great. Now what we've done is we've associated a builder with each one of them. It has to be a top level method because it's used in a const. I don't believe I can get away with this, but we're going to try. If I put this in there, I think it'll fail. You see, it's going to highlight this as a problem because when this line is evaluated, that's when it creates this method, right? The method still exists down here, but now it has a name attached to it. And that makes it a top level method that can be, seen by lots of people, the application. So it's kind of a naff. It's kind of annoying, but you can do this. And now what we can do is back on the main screen, we can do the same thing that we did on navigation. Let's go grab it from navigation here, where we kind of loop over. And what we can do now is say, yeah. Now what we're doing, right? I don't want to do that. I want to do expanded. I just want to run the builder. Yeah, so I can say item.builder context, right? Something like that. Which is it works. I'm not. It's up to this screen though. So I kind of feel like the valuation of what widget to display should not be in the model, but be in the screen. So probably a nicer way of dealing with this is simply just do like build page, right? Have a build context pass across here, and then also have, actually, in fact, this is stateful, so we don't need that. But we will have the nav item. And then we can use this, say, and say something like nav. I really want the dot syntax to come in. I really do. Nav item dot home and a home page, right? So there's still we can do other empty widget right now. This does exactly the same thing as the other page, right? So this is doing, we have a method, it's instantiated as part of the class, not multiple instances, and it does the evaluation as we go, which, to be honest, is no real different in terms of performance or anything like that. And we just do build page and pass the item. That's nice. And it keeps it in line, keeps it in the same place. Depends on what you're doing. If you would like again, I'm using this on one page. It kind of seems pointless to put it into the model. But there might be places where you want to maybe build an icon or some other sort of asset that's displayed that's relative to the object, the enum in some fashion. Then you might need to do that kind of building of a widget in place in the enum as it were. So if I restart this, we should get the same thing, but now I switch. There we go. Now I can switch tabs. I'm switching screen from empty to thing. You'll notice something else that takes place here. You'll see that on this screen, the Wi-Fi and the battery and the time is actually white. And when I go to the next screen, it goes black. or dark gray.
Uh-oh.
That is automatic. It's automatic because of the way I built the application. So I wanted to show this to people because a lot of people don't know about this. At my top level, I've done what's called an annotated region. Annotated regions are the magic behind all of this. Again, it's another thing that is not well known. This allows you to annotate a portion of your display with a model object. In this case, the system looks for system UI overlay style for the area that covers the status bar. If that area is covered by one of these annotated regions, it will use that model to define the colors. So in this case, by default, the top level of my application, I say, is dark. Then on my home screen, so if I go into so again, it depends on how it's laid out on the screen. So if I go to my main screen, that displays that main page, which is home page. Home page declares at the top, in that area of the screen, a top nav bar. And that top nav bar says it uses light icons. This means when it evaluates what color to display at the top for the status icons, it chooses light icons on this screen and dark on the other automatically. I don't have to keep flipping between them and changing them automatically. It's all part of the layout. This is what annotated region does for you. You can also use this yourself for very other similar processes if you need to, where what you want to do is say, what portion of the screen do I want to apply some data to? This is very important when you're talking about declarative approaches to UI. So have a think about that. You might find that you can put it to good use. All right, so where were we? Yeah, main screen. So we've got home screen. Let's start up a little feature folder for each of the different sections. That's because I want to do it. So we'll say categories page and categories page Dart. I just copied the home page for that. Page, and we're just going to make these empty for now. All right, that'll do. And what else do we want? Categories and cart. Cart page. And what else do we want? A wish list. Wish list page. No, not capital L. Page. Just the new home page. That's the blah, blah. Right. And finally, what was the last page? Okay. I've just changed the wrong page, didn't I? Yes, I did.
It happens.
Bound to happen once. Right. Try that again. And this is the account page. So, all right. So we have account page. Oh, I done it again. Cart page. Probably renamed the wrong one there. Yeah. Account page. Cart page. Categories page. And wishlist page. Okay, cool. They're all in play. So now if we go back to our main screen, we can now put in those in here. We have the categories, cart, wish list, account.
Yeah, it seems like those all should have been fields on the enums, but okay.
Again?
Those should have all just been fields on the enums, but yeah.
And now we don't need that one because it's complete. You mean like the class? I mean, there's another thing. Like so there's other ways you can do this. Like we can actually, since these have all got like constructors, we can use tear-offs as well. There's another option.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. So in your enum, you could have added
It all
a
depends on.
field for the tear off of the widget.
Yeah, I mean, we can also. We'll leave this for now, right? This is, whenever you see something repeated, it can be done differently. But
Yes.
but in this case, what we're saying, just for those people at home that don't know, you can actually do this.
Yep.
In fact,
You have the right type for the column, yeah.
Sorry?
If you have the right type for that.
Oh yeah, just so we can say in here we want a. I wonder if we can get away with doing a dynamic function here. That just if we do function like build on the builder, whatever.
Yeah.
That returns a widget. Maybe this works. I don't know. We'll find out, won't we?
Well, I've done this just recently for an app I'm building, so yeah. I have an enum with like 5 classes or 5 fields, and one of them is like the route, and another is the widget to build with, or the builder function for it. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
There we go. So it's going to use. So the .new is the special keyword for a function tariff of the built-in constructor. That's the unnamed constructor. For those that don't know, and that's how you reference it. So that's another way. This kind of satisfies the what we were just saying, like the 2 different approaches we've done here, right? So cart page, wish list. I'm going to leave it in there. Why not, right? This does mean though that we can't necessarily pass. They all have to have the same type of constructor with the same parameters.
Yeah.
Which has its downsides as well. If you want to pass specifics information into each maybe section, I don't think I'm ever going to have that on this, so I'm quite happy doing it this way, and I like this actually. It feels good.
Yeah. Unless you do that trick that they did in Freezed to get something to be interpreted one way in one place and another way in another place using callable classes.
Yeah, let's not do that. Right.
It's. I tried to get my head around it and almost understood it at one point. That I went, no, that's just I understand
So
sort of.
Basically, what we've done by doing that is it means we can get rid of this function, and just like we had it earlier, we can now do item.builder. That's it. Because now we're calling out a constructor, because that's a constructor, that's a function tariff.
Yep.
Right. So let's put a little, just so we know what page is what right now. Let's put a little text and just say count. I don't know, do that. So copy that. So we have a count. I've done this before. I copied it.
Just another announcement for things that have just come out. Go Router 10 just dropped a couple days ago. More breaking changes. Woohoo! I was just getting used to 9, and then they changed to 10 already.
And a wish list. All right. So I think that kind of does our top level. Let's see. Are the imported files supposed to be packages? Yes. This is a package import for the current project. It's perfectly viable. You don't have to have local references. It depends on how you want to do it, right? Makes no difference.
I'm actually finding I first wasn't very warmed up to the idea of saying package and your local program name, local repo name. But I now like that better because when I'm doing global substitutions, it's easier to not have to deal with relative references.
Oh, yeah.
when you're
Oh, yeah.
doing like a global substrate replace. Like, and I'm finding that as I'm refactoring, sometimes having the ability to do a find and replace in my IDE on the path names is actually becoming more often than I thought it would ever be. So it's nice to have that as a feature.
Oh, it's working. So that's nice.
Yay! Ship it. Let's do it.
All right. So
Okay.
next. So
Yeah. What else?
do we want to? I think we want to.
Login flow.
No, I'm thinking about like each of these sections has this top bar.
Okay.
So that might be nice, but I don't want to like do too much overall. I think we'll stick to the home page. Let's do some slivers and things.
We're just coming up to the top of the third hour. If you
all right,
need any kind of motivation to identify what you're going to
finish off this little bit, and then that'll be it now. So that's kind of nice. We don't deal with top level nav. Do people probably ask about how you? This does not deal with how do I navigate when I like say I click on a button? How do I go to the cart page, right? Well, you can do that with you go up the tree to find the main screen. Let's say you're in the home page or something, and then literally in here, main screen state. We could do something like this. This is literally what you can do with this. There's other ways you can do inherited widget and other things, right? But you could say main screen state of build context. So this does get asked to me quite often, so we'll cover this briefly. And this is find ancestor state of type main. Oh, I'll get rid of that on the screen there.
screen state.
Right. So now
it's sort of cheating because you're using the standard stateful widgets thing as if it's an inherited widget.
You can do that. It's not cheating. That's exactly how. That's literally how it does it under the hood. So
it feels like cheating. It feels like cheating.
And then in here we can say void go to page, go to section nav item.
And the alternative would be to make this just a riverpod thing, but okay.
The whole point of doing this is not to put any state management in here, right? This is showing you like what you can do with all the stuff that's built into the framework, right? Then we're asking the people that do the course that learn with us how to now take this and go, okay, how do I do this with riverpod? How do I do this with provider, right? So actually go to section ends up being the same as this, so we'll replace that function, and now what we can do is let's say we're in oops, I have made it bigger because it's now let's say we're on we want to go, so when we press on the promo, since I was doing that promo carousel, we didn't handle deep linking here. So let's push that up. The handling of the up value changed. Promo model on promo pressed. Right. Bring that up. And in doing that, now on our home page where we have our carousel, we can add where is it, on promo pressed, promo model, right? Promo, if promo, maybe we should have index as well. I don't think it should be necessary. If promo, why are you having a problem with this? Const construct. Oh yes, that would be a bad. To talk about this for briefly, if we wanted to fix that and actually do it nicely, we could just lift up that function, which I'm going to do right now anyway, on promo press, promo model, promo, right? Again, we're passing the name function over then. All it says should be. Well, that's only going to happen apparently if it's global. Lucky me. But whatever. Right. That's what I want. Right. So now here we can say if promo. I don't have another comparison point right now. So if it's promo 1, we want to say main screen of. So this is again. So we had our tap. What do we want to do on that action? We say main screen of context. Go to section. Which we take into the wish list, right? Nav item dot wish list. And again, I forgot to make it static. That's my fault. And then we also do the same trick we did earlier, which is where we want to export the nav item. In from here. So again. And now we get whenever we import main screen, we get nav item, right? Okay, so now if we just do this again, else if, and we'll say when you press on that, we'll go cart promo 2. Obviously, there's not the great way of comparison just doing this because there's a data point. This should probably have an ID in the model, or the model itself has like the URL, the product or the category or whatever, right? But for demonstration purposes, like this is this is fix me.
Right, like your assets enum could have the place you're supposed to go, for example.
So now if I load the app up and I go and click on this second one, boom, we're taken to the top cart screen. Go back to home screen, scroll back over, click on the first one, boom, we're taken to the wish list.
Ooh.
Simples.
Cool.
All right. So I think
top of the hour.
We're running out of time here. What do we have in? What are people saying about this?
We not really. They've just been sort of watching. Not really anything.
Can't you add an extension method and switch on this and return the widget Darius? Oh, in fact, that's what we did. So there you go. Yeah, yes, Darius, we can. Are there import files? Yeah, I have seen this in inherited widget. Yeah. So the promo function will be inside the desired state management solution, right? Yes, it can be. Yeah, I think we. I may see if I can do some live streams between now and next week, between our next show. Well, I'm going to do some more of this, and I'll just do it right here on StreamYard and on the YouTube. So if you sign up to the YouTube channel, you'll get a notice. So subscribe.
Cool.
That's
subscribe and thumb up, and tell your friends. We want more people on the live show too, because we love having questions.
Subscribe and all that jazz. Yeah. So I guess I'll be seeing you probably before 166 hours, but Randall, you'll be seeing us 165 hours. Sorry, yeah.
We had 3 hours today. That's right. And for those of you that we had to cut off some questions at the end. Again, just come back early next week and get your questions in first, and then we'll definitely get to your questions. But we do have to cut off questions eventually. Otherwise, we'll be doing a 5-hour show, and
which we've done in the past.
Not enough 5-hour shoots for that to be able to do that. So yay. And go check out FP Dart and go check out Go Router 10 and enjoy yourself. Lots of new stuff. ISAR, all the new stuff.
All right. I'll see everyone soon. Bye.
Absolutely. Bye, everybody.
Oh, wrong button.